If I could ask everyone to take their seat, we would like to get started now. First of all, welcome to Nelson's Music City. I appreciate everyone coming. My name is Barbara Nelson. If I didn't meet you, I'm glad to meet you. And just a few housekeeping items. The restrooms are in the lobby. The ladies is on that side and the men's is on the north side. We have various sandwiches and soda available for drinks, as well as a few other snacks. And if anyone has any questions, let me know. But for now, I would like to introduce the lady that's put all of this together, put a lot of hard work in it, Terry Proffer.
It's Tori. That's me in 1993. I'm a geek and I'm not a public speaker, so you'll have to excuse me, I'll do my best. I started building internet service in 1993 in this county, and actually brought the first internet to the state of Missouri in St. Francis County, which made me the first woman ISP. And during those times, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, no social networking. We had to build the internet. So we started out with dial-up, went to DSL. And then in 2000, we found this magic thing called wireless. And, Barbara, did you make it back there?
Yep.
Next slide, please. So in 2000, I started building networks, wireless networks in St. Louis. And wireless is difficult. You have to have a high altitude to make the signal work. It's called a Fresnel zone. That's me up on the Gold Tower in Westport in Maryland Heights, where I built my first network. And because wireless was a new technology, we had to create an industry association so that we could tell Washington, D.C. about this new technology that was going to be able to go out into rural areas, that was going to be able to change the nation as far as how we connected through our mass media. So we started an organization called WISPA, the Wireless Internet Service Providers Association. I was elected on the board of directors not once, but twice, and they wanted me on there a third time and said, no, that was enough. They sent us to DC, where we lobbied for fixed wireless. And I sort of got to know politics, politicians a little bit in that venue. I spoke at Fort McNair, at the National War College for disaster communications, explaining how wireless would really change the landscape for our first responders. Well, after over 2 decades in the industry, I retired. Next slide. And I said goodbye to high-rises, because that wasn't enough. Because climbing high-rises and towers just wasn't a thing for a 60-year-old woman to do. So I got myself a place out in the woods because, next slide, I saw where our country was going. Well, I started out with a dog first, so you have to have a good dog if you're living out in the woods. Next slide. And that's my lake, and I decided to sort of hunker down because I saw that where our nation is going. And it's not going in a good direction, folks. We're in trouble. And I thought that maybe I could just prepare, batten down, duck for cover, and I could escape it. But then July came around of last year, and 4 of my Marine Corps recruiters were slaughtered in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Next slide. I joined the United States Marine Corps when I was 19 years old. Vietnam War was raging on, and there were people that were dodging the draft, and I felt it my duty to my country to join. In those days, we trained the same as the guys. We had the same training course as the guys. And that's why we had such a high attrition rate of women Marines. And during Vietnam, there were only less than 3,000 women Marines that served. And I guess I'm just hard-headed, but I made it through there. And that's why my oath is so precious to me, because I believe in our country. Next slide. In 2010, I joined the Oath Keepers. Well, I'm an Oath Keeper, And I thought that, you know, this is a perfect group for me to be involved with, because there are folks here that are veterans, that are active duty, that are sheriff, Leo, and these people believe in our Constitution and believe in their oath of service, because it's not something that just goes away. It's a pact with God that you make, and you just can't make that go away. So in 2010, I worked with Jim Krause, who's here in our audience, and we were the Missouri Forum moderators for our national forum. In that July, after my Marine Corps recruiters were slaughtered, I got a call from Stuart Rhodes, who's founder of Oath Keepers, and they were organizing Operation Protect Our Protectors. And he said, what you need to do, you need to organize an armed patrol for our recruiters, because the military is not allowing them to have weapons, not allowing them to protect ourselves. Next slide. So we organized an armed patrol. This is Thomas Young. He was one of our last to stand at the patrol. We were there for many weeks. And what the recruiters were told to do, believe it or not, from the National Defense, next slide. Oops, backwards. Oops, you're going backward there, Barbara? Somebody's fishing on my lake today, I can bet. So what the Marine Corps recruiters were told to do was not to wear their uniform into the recruiting stations. And that's how they were to protect themselves. So here's my Marine Corps recruiter and his PTs. What a country we're in. So that's when my community service started. It was in July of last year, and I haven't stopped since then. And I don't know what the heck I'm doing, folks. All I know is that we've got to do something, because we're in big trouble. And I think that during this presentation you're going to see today how much trouble we're in. I'm going to go ahead and read off our speaker agenda. Next slide. We're going to start out with Tim Huff and Thomas Young. They're going to be our color guard, our national anthem and pledge. Bob Parker's going to come on. It will be our MC for half the afternoon. He'll be bringing in our prayer and introduction. I haven't seen Linda Black come in, so Senator Romine, then he'll take the next speaking slot. We have Iron County Commissioner Skaggs with us. Cynthia Davis is going to talk to us about our Constitutional Amendment 1. She's also a vendor here with her Christian bookstore, Back to Basics. And Marie Lassiter. Have I seen Marie show up? Marie Lassiter, she's has her Master's of Science in Nursing. She's the director of Texas County Medical Reserve Corps. She's also running for county coroner for Texas County. And she's going to talk to us about fluoridation, worsening the lead crisis in Flint in your town. Then Doug Inyart, we're going to take a 20-minute break then at that point. Doug Inyart will then return as our Masters of Ceremony, and he's going to speak about DNR responsibilities. Doug's also here as a vendor, and he's representing the Constitution Party of Missouri. He is the state director. We're then going to see Ike Skelton, and Ike Skelton is going to talk to us about UN Agenda 21. You know, when I was an ISP, I was on the internet in very early days, and we saw these things, that the UN was going to take over our nation and so on, and they called us conspiracy theorists. In fact, my executive director of Westwood put a tinfoil hat on me one day and posted it on the internet. But you know what? We weren't conspiracy theorists, we're critical thinkers. There's a big difference. You know, a conspiracy theorist goes on sort of a nut thing, and we're going to show you today that we're right. Kevin Jost, I'm really glad to have him with us today. He is a police chief of Somerville, Missouri, and he's a sheriff candidate for Oregon County and running for a constitutional sheriff. We only have two positions in this country that are the power positions in our nation, and that's our president and that's our constitutional sheriff. You can have a president and he can be out there, but as long as you've got a constitutional sheriff, your back door is locked. And you have to have, that's an extremely important position that you have to have filled in your county. And you've got to make sure that your sheriff understands the Constitution. Then we have Gary Matheny. Gary is an attorney in Farmington. He's going to be speaking about the indispensable right to private property. Gary's also a vendor here, and we'll be talking about his campaign. John Schell is here today, and he's running for U.S. Congressional candidate for the Missouri 8th Congressional District. And he will be speaking to us about individual rights. Michael Don Stack, my friend here, that helped me organize this and sort of talk me through some of the rough spots. He's going to be speaking about theft is the wrong message to send to our citizens. It certainly is. Pam Arthur is here from Kansas City. She has a website called Preparedness Now. She's a vendor here, and she's going to be speaking about being prepared. We all need to be prepared in these days. You know, some Mormons talk about having 6 months of food, and you just need to be prepared because we don't know where we're going in this country. Things are just going so awry. Tessa Marler is over here. She is a writer for us for our website, wecat.org. It's for, WeCat stands for We the People, Committees, Committee Action Teams, so we call ourselves Committees of Safety. And we put out a website that we hope to eventually upload to WISP networks, wireless internet service providers networks, and it has survival information. Should we ever lose the internet, the WISP has a unique ability to have two-way traffic because they have what's called an intranet. So they can take information that they have already pre-stored on a server and still send out that information when there's no internet. So if you're connected to a WISP, and we have 2 of them here in this area, then you've got a good service provider. Tim Huff is going to close for us, and he is going to talk about growing up in Glover. He's got a slideshow that I think that's going to be very interesting. It's going to show you exactly the lead damage that was caused by a Sarco and how it's affected our lead belt. What's going on here in these Sarco funds, this is sort of a dual purpose rally because of the fact that we're looking at the ASARCO funds and that abuse there, but we're also looking at property rights because they intertwine with each other. I have the donation jugs in the back, and so after I pay the bills, and if there's anything left over, next slide, I will be running for House Representative District 145. I'll be running on the Constitution Party ticket. I go to Jefferson City next week to turn in my paperwork. And I believe serving the public, it's not an option, it's an obligation. We're at that point that we all need to be concerned and obligated to understand who the folks are that are making up the rules. And if those are the rules, and those rules are constitutional rules, we need to know that they're right. Next slide. Color guard? Thank you.
Interesting fact with you. I'll pull it up here real quick so I may get my facts straight. This flag is not the true flag of the United States of America. The flag Thomas Young just posted is the true flag of the United States of America. The yellow fringe flag, believe it or not, you'll see it everywhere, including in your courtrooms. The yellow fringe indicates something called admiralty or maritime law, which is representing no constitutional law and no American nation. So believe it or not, that's what the gold fringe truly means. So I'm going to pass this off to Mr. Johnson, and he's going to take this out of the... Ma'am, can you forward the slides, please? To the video presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do a video presentation here. It's going to be about 9 minutes. and we're going to get to the actual national anthem once we go through the video presentation. So feel free to have a seat during the presentation, and then we will stand and do our national anthem and pledge of allegiance.
There was a lawyer once, his name was Francis Scott Key. He penned a song that I'm sure you're aware of. You've seen it. It's in most hymnals throughout our churches. It's called the national anthem. It is our song as an American. We go, however, to a ball game. We stand in our church services and we sing the words of that song, and they float over our minds and our lips, and we don't even realize what we're singing. Most of us have memorized it as a child, but we've never really thought about what it means. Let me tell you a story. Francis Scott Key was a lawyer in Baltimore. The colonies were engaged in vicious conflict with the mother country, Britain. Because of this conflict and the protractedness of it, they had accumulated prisoners on both sides. The American colonies had prisoners and the British had prisoners. And the American government initiated a move. They went to the British and they said, let us negotiate for the release of these prisoners. They said, we want to send a man out to discuss this with you. They were holding the American prisoners in boats about 1,000 yards offshore. And they said, we want to send a man by the name of Francis Scott Key. He will come out and negotiate to see if we can make a mutual exchange. On the appointed day, in a rowboat, he went out to this boat and he negotiated with the British officials. And they reached a conclusion that men could be exchanged on a one-for-one basis. Francis Scott Key, jubilant with the fact that he'd been successful, went down below in the boats, and what he found was a cargo hold full of humanity, men. And he said, men, I've got news for you tonight. You're free. He said, tonight I have negotiated successfully your return to the colonies. He said, you'll be taken out of this boat, out of this filth, out of your chains. As he went back up on board to arrange for their passage to the shore, the admiral came in. He said, we have a slight problem. He said, we will still honor our commitment to release these men, but it'll be merely academic after tonight. It won't matter. And Francis Scott Key said, what do you mean? He said, well, Mr. Key, he said, tonight we have laid an ultimatum upon the colonies. Your people will either capitulate and lay down the colors of that flag that you think so much of, or you see that fort right over there, Fort Henry? He said, we're going to remove it from the face of the earth. He said, how are you going to do that? He said, if you will, scan the horizon of the sea. And as he looked, he could see hundreds of little dots. And he said, that's the entire British war fleet. He said, all of the gunpowder, all of the armament is being called upon to demolish that fort. It will be here within striking distance in a matter of about 2.5 hours. He said, the war's over, these men would be free anyway. He said, you can't shell that fort. He said, that's a large fort. He said, it's full of women and children. He says, it's predominantly not a military fort. He said, don't worry about it. They said, we've left them a way out. He said, what's that? He said, do you see that flag way up on the rampart? He said, we have told them that if they will lower that flag, the shelling will stop immediately. And we'll know that they've surrendered, and you'll now be under British rule. Francis Scott Key went down below and told the men what was about to happen. And he said, how many ships? He said, hundreds. The ships got closer. Francis Scott Key went back up on top and he said, men, I'll shout down to you what's going on as we watch. As twilight began to fall, and as the haze hung over the ocean as it does at sunset, Suddenly, the British war fleet unleashed. He says the sound was deafening. There were so many guns that there were no reliefs. He said it was absolutely impossible to talk or hear. He said suddenly the sky, although dark, was suddenly lit. And he says from down below, all he could hear the men, the prisoners, saying was, "Tell us where the flag is. What have they done with the flag? Is the flag still flying over the rampart? Tell us." 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours into the shelling. Every time the bomb would explode and it would be close to the flag, they could see the flag in the illuminated red glare of that bomb, and Francis Scott Key would report down to the men below, "It's still up. It's not down." The admiral came and he said, "Your people are insane." He said, "What's the matter with them?" He said, "Don't they understand this is an impossible situation?" Francis Scott Key said he remembered what George Washington had said. He said, "The thing that sets the American Christian apart from all other people in the world is he will die on his feet before he'll live on his knees." The admiral said, "We have now instructed all of the guns to focus on the rampart to take that flag down." He said, "We don't understand something. Our reconnaissance tells us that that flag has been hit directly again and again and again, and yet it's still flying. We don't understand that." But he said, "Now we're about to bring every gun for the next 3 hours to bear on that point." Francis Scott Key said the barrage was unmerciful. All that he could hear was the men down below praying. The prayer, "God, keep that flag flying where we last saw it." Sunrise came. He said there was a heavy mist hanging over the land, but the rampart was tall enough. There stood the flag, completely nondescript, in shreds. The flagpole itself was at a crazy angle. The flag was still at the top. Francis Scott Key went aboard and immediately went into Fort Henry to see what had happened. And what he found had happened was that that flagpole and that flag had suffered repetitious direct hits. And when it had fallen, but men, fathers, knew what it meant for that flag to be on the ground. Although knowing that all of the British guns were trained on it, walked over and held it up humanly until they died. Their bodies were removed and others took their place. Francis Scott Key said what held that flagpole in place at that unusual angle were patriots' bodies. He penned a song, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming. Or the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that the flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet fly and wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? The debt was demanded, the price it was paid."
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? were so gallantly springing, and rockets red blue, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the pledge of allegiance to our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and for the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I believe what that shows is insurmountable odds. As long as you stand for what's right, you're going to win. So let's hope that's the case. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, and he's going to help us with the prayer. Missouri rancher, Bob Parker. Bob? Bob is the co-chairman of the Missouri Property Rights Coalition as well. So give a hand to Mr. Bob Parker.
Good afternoon. That was very touching, wasn't it? Did that bring a tear to anybody's eye besides mine? You know, when we look at what's going on in this country today, it is very concerning to me, and I know many of you, and that's why we're here. And before we go on, I'd like to ask God's blessing upon what we say and do here today. So join with me for a minute in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you. We thank you for all the wonderful gifts and the freedom that you've given to us here in this wonderful country. And Father, you see what's going on in this nation around us, and we just ask that you would give us endurance and patience and help us to speak out where we can and do what we can. Pray that you give our elected officials wisdom. Help us to speak up when others refuse to speak or are afraid to speak. Give us boldness. Pray for the families and the people that are represented here, Father. I pray that you just protect them, watch over them. We just commit this meeting to you, Father. We just pray for Missouri. We pray for the Ozarks. We pray for the Lead Belt. We pray for all the issues that are going before us right now, Father. And we ask that you just put your hand on our state and on this region, that the right things that would be done and that our legislature would react in the right kind of way to the situation that we face. So Lord, we just look to you. We give you all the glory for all the good things you do for us. And we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. I'm going to talk a little bit about the rancher you see on the screen, Lavoy Finicum. Anybody been following the Finicum situation? Now, I've been a rancher. I grew up on a ranch out in western Kansas, and I bought a ranch in Missouri when I was 20 years old, and I still have ranches. Some of you do here. And property rights is something that's always been near and dear to my heart, because I never could figure out how I could buy a piece of land, own it in this great country, and then some unelected bureaucrat somewhere in some office decides what I can do with it and how I need to manage it. I never did quite figure that out. I just read Lavoy Finicum's book a couple of weeks ago, Through Blood and Suffering, and I highly recommend you read it, because Lavoy Finicum got it. He understood our Constitution. He understood what's happening in this country. He documents it very well in his book. And as I read it, I realized that Lavoy Finicum was someone like me that has learned so much about what the problem really is in this country and has tried to stand up and do something about it. And the question is, what can we do? What can we do? I've been fighting and having meetings and speaking for years about property rights and what's going on. I haven't fought the fight like Lavoy and the Bundys and others out west have fought. The Bundy family was the last ranch in their county. There were over 50 ranchers that were destroyed by the regulations of the government. I got out of the dairy business in Missouri because of the regulations of DNR. I was told by an agent in the DNR, they said, when I was wanting to do a processing plan, he said, I recommend you get out of the business because they're going to litigate and fine people and it'll never end. And these issues have affected me personally just like they have Lavoy. Lavoy was killed a few weeks ago, and the Bundys are in prison, and they rounded up a bunch more yesterday. What do we do? How do we get the attention of our elected officials? But I just want you to think about Lavoy and so many others going through the struggle and what his family's going through. And in my life and in my world, Lavoy Finicum is a hero. He didn't just talk the talk, he tried to do something. And I remember the clip where Bundy was on the phone with the FBI and he said, I have over 200 ranchers with issues with the BLM. Will you please investigate? And I don't know of a single investigation of any federal agents going on anywhere. So let's remember Lavoy. That will be a name that I'll never forget. I'll never forget what he's done and what he stood for. And I'll continue to pray for him and his family. I just want to say a few words before we get started. Linda Black will be coming up here in about 10 minutes or less. I'll try to keep it short. As I said, I've been in this fight a long time. I co-chair a group called the Property Rights Coalition. We have chapters all across the state. We've done a lot of work over the years. Russell Wood was the chairman that passed away, and me and Doreen Honest took his place to help continue the fight for property rights, and that our voices would be heard, that these federal agencies and the bureaucrats would have to somehow be brought under control. We made many trips to Washington, to Jefferson City, speaking to our representatives, we fought the Natural Streams Act. Years ago, they did an effort, the Natural Streams Act, trying to regulate the farms and ranches and waterways. We got that stopped. The Man in the Biosphere, the United Nations Man in the Biosphere, it's a global program. The whole Ozark region in here was going to be a biosphere reserve. Basically regulate the people out of here. Move them into the cities. This would just be wildlands out here in many areas. And here's a map of the wildlands. This is what's proposed for America. I saw this map several years ago and I thought, man, is that true? I was out in Colorado speaking to a group of independent ranchers in southeast Colorado that the government is trying to take their farms and ranches. A huge swath of southeast Colorado. And the lady that was heading the fight showed me a map of the Wildlands Project, and she had got a very detailed blow-up of the Wildlands Project, and she laid it over the areas that they had proposed to take over out there in southeast Colorado, and it was exactly the same. The borders were exactly the same as the Wildlands map. So take this pretty seriously. What these are wildlife corridors. So we can have diversity of wildlife, so they can exchange genetics, so they can still migrate and travel around. It's crazy. It's crazy. But these red areas are the core wildlands area that they don't want anybody living in. And then you have the yellow areas that are highly regulated, where you have very limited human activity. And then they have certain areas that are human use areas. And this is what they're doing. This is what the federal agencies are doing. This is what Department of Transportation is doing. This is Housing and Urban Development. This is Department of Agriculture. They're all going by this map. We are being regulated and strangled to death. We had another effort. It was called the National Heritage Area. We had a meeting in Mountain View. We had 350 people. We had a packed house. Me and Doreen invited the proponents of the National Heritage Area to come and give their views on it, and then we gave our documents and our information, and we got that stopped. But they wanted to take over a huge region again. The same area. The same areas were involved. We got it stopped by exposing it, explaining to people. It took hours of research, hours of work. We got it stopped. Then we had the National Blueways. I heard about the National Blueways. I was the first one in Missouri that exposed the National Blueways program. Did hours and hours and hours of research trying to figure out what it was. People in Arkansas, I'd heard from people in Arkansas about the Blueways program, and what we discovered was unbelievable. They had a huge section of Missouri they wanted to basically turn into, again, an area just so heavily regulated and controlled by these bureaucracies that you really can't do production agriculture, logging, mining. And we got that stopped. We got them to rescind that in Congress, and our local representatives were very helpful. Were very helpful in getting that stopped, and I certainly thank them for their efforts. And we got that stopped. So now we have this land grab thing that they're doing. Now because of the lead contamination, they sued, and now they have this millions and millions of dollars, and now they're diverting the money from up here in the lead belt down to our country in South Missouri, Oregon County, down in there. And now they're buying this land that are in these wildlands areas to connect all their, whatever their master plan is. And it's outrageous. And who is involved? Department of Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, and the National Park Service. Again, the same people that have been pushing all this other stuff. The same stuff. And it's so outrageous. It's so outrageous. They have their, they didn't share with our elected officials what they're doing. County commissioners didn't know anything about it, and they'll be speaking about it here shortly. Outrageous what these agencies are doing. Now we have legislation proposed in the House. Robert Ross, my state rep, proposed legislation and it passed. It passed the House. I'm not sure where it's at in the Senate. Maybe somebody can update us on that.
Overwhelming support in committee. It will pass with a veto-proof majority.
Awesome. Awesome. That's good news. We have got to stop this outrageous behavior by these agencies. This is outrageous. And how in the world can we have DNR, Federal Fish and Wildlife and National Park Service deciding where they're going to spend millions of dollars that needs to stay up in this area? Why aren't our elected officials involved? So they not only need to have legislation forcing them to sell that 4,700 acres that they purchased, but they need to somehow rein in the decision-making of these agencies and be involved in how they spend this money. So this doesn't happen because according to these agencies, this is just the beginning. They're going to buy land all over the place down there. They have millions and millions of dollars. They have many projects after this. This isn't the end of it. This is the beginning. This has to be stopped. This has to be stopped now. My wife told me when I came, she said, "Oh, be careful, don't raise your voice." I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that. I would like to ask Representative Linda Black to come up, and she has, I know, been a vocal opponent of this. She's the representative here in the Farmington area, and we will give Linda a few minutes to share with us on what's in her heart. And thanks so much, Linda. Thanks so much, Linda. What I can't figure out is how they expanded the lead belt to include Oregon. I understand they even included Texas County where I live, and I'm not sure how big that expansion is, but there's no lead mining down there. I don't know how they did that. Another angle is Texas County has something we adopted called a land use plan, where we notified all our federal and state agencies that if they're discussing something that affects our county, we have to be involved in that discussion. I don't believe my commissioners were ever involved in any discussion on being included in the lead belt. So that's under the NEPA Act. That's federal. They have to do that. That's another angle. So I don't know. Mike, where are you at, Mike Slack?
Here, it was Joanne Emerson who included us in the lead belt.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Joanne.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they've included what? Howe County, Oregon? What else? Texas?
Shannon, Carter, Texas, right? Yeah. No lead
Okay.
mining anywhere there.
And there's no lead mining.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another huge issue. Senator Gary Romine, we need to get you up here and get you on deck. And
I gotta lower this, I'm not quite that tall. One, I appreciate the invitation to come and update you on the process that we have been dealing with in Jefferson City. And I do want you to know that oftentimes you may disagree with your elected officials on all decisions or some decisions, but do know I work in good company with Senator Gary Romine, Presiding Commissioner Jim Skaggs. We really have the best interest of our districts and our community at heart. And oftentimes we have to navigate prior statutes and law, not only at the state level, but the federal level, to be able to deal with these situations, such as this last one with the ASARCO settlement that we've been working very diligently from county to state and with our federal elected congressmen to try to do what is right, in our opinion, on behalf of our communities. And we do have to understand what we believe is right on behalf of our communities is not exactly what all people feel is right statewide. The land purchase in Oregon, in my opinion, is something that is not good for my community. I have a lot of lead mine tailings in my community. I have a lot of restoration and remediation and habitat restoration that needs to be taking place in my community and in my district. And so for those people who have elected me, I feel that it's my due diligence to make sure that I'm fighting very hard to make sure those monies stay locally in my community to do rehabilitative type services. But to go back through the process that we have been working with, whenever the ASARCO settlement was finalized in federal court, the judge laid out where monies could be spent, which is very narrowly focused to those mine-telling areas that we all share in here, southeast Missouri. But also there was a reference to a CERCLA, which is a restoration, remediation, implementation plan by the federal government through EPA. And CERCLA is the door in to diverting those funds to other areas. If it was just the judge's statement of where the money should be spent, that's pretty cut and dry because it has each of the impact zones listed. But then referencing the CERCLA, which says that in addition to these restoration areas, that CERCLA also can be adhered to. It's kind of a guideline to go by, in that it opens the door for compensatory land purchases. And that's how the Oregon piece of land, the tract of land along the 11 point, was able to be purchased. Now we have come through, I know I have every line of that settlement agreement. I've read CERCLA, and we've had an interim committee appointed by the Speaker, Todd Richardson, from down in Poplar Bluff. We had an interim committee of House members to investigate this one issue. And luckily, we do have some attorneys on that committee as well. And after sorting through, listening to testimony, what we have come up with as far as, is it legal? It is legal, but it is not right, and there's a difference. So we have to navigate from this point forward and look at ways that we can attract this money to our local communities. Although there's been several $1 million spent on land purchases in Oregon County, or at least they're pending, there are restoration and remediation monies left in this ASARCO settlement for our local communities, and here's what you can do. I know that if you have any relation with your local municipalities, your mayors, your state representatives, senators, congressmen, presiding commissioners in your counties, in your communities, if you have ideas where this money can be spent, and it's very narrowly focused, wetland remediation, habitat restoration, this all deals with environmental damages. Not our yards, not those types of things, but the way that the environment was impacted. And so we're looking for projects so that we can vie for that money. They don't have to be engineered, and no consultants have to be hired at this point in time, because we have some, through the program, we have that ability to have these potential projects looked at. And so we just need ideas as elected officials. We need to know, if you know of an area that needs restored, an area that needs remediation, if you know of a habitat that's been impacted by prior mining practices, we need to be able to send those ideas to the trustees. The trustees are, in the ASARCO, are U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. And that is the problem why Senator Romine and my hands are tied as far as, if it was a state appropriation, we could stop that immediately. We would have the majority of our legislative bodies agreeing with us on this. But the problem is, it was a federal court decision, and it's held in a federal trust. So we can't just go in and blow it all up and stop it, or believe me, we would have a long time ago, but that's not, we can't do that within the jurisdiction of our offices. So we need projects for you all to bring forward, giving them to your commissioners, mayors, public elected officials, so that we can try to get that money to our local area. There's a project in Leadwood called Bone Hole. There is one that's being looked at in Park Hills along the Flat River Creek, where it has gone out of its banks on many occasions, and there's some riverbank restoration that needs to take place. So just know, just like you have an interest in what takes place in government. those of us that are elected, sometimes we're just looked at as the politically elected, and what are you doing in Jefferson City or Washington DC? But know that before I was a state representative, I was a cattle farmer, a teacher, a mother, a daughter, a sister, and I had a passion just like you do, to do more things for my community and to do more things as an individual, as a citizen. And I just put my name on the ballot, as any of you can here today, and try to make things different. And oftentimes, we have to stay confined to the laws that we have. And with this ASARCO settlement, we are finding that we're dealing with an uphill battle because to this point, from all of the research, testimony, input that we've gotten, it is being followed to the letter of the law. I have contacted an environmental law firm in St. Louis who has dealt with environmental issues in the past. I've solicited their help in this to see if citizens have a class action potential here, that if the citizens of my county have been wronged, that's what we're looking at right now, so that we can maybe, and this is a long stretch, find some kind of an avenue in to try to stop the land purchase and then divert that money back to those impact zones. So that's a work in progress. I don't want to get your hopes up that that's going to happen, but know that I didn't just stop with the committee report, and I didn't just stop with learning and hearing that, we're pretty much, well, this is the way it is. I kept continuing and continuing on my own to find avenues to try to right this wrong by consulting with an environmental law firm who has dealt with these settlements before. And look, right now it's looking pretty good that we may have an action on behalf of at least St. Francis Company that is responsible for the environmental damages. Yes. Yes, actually, a lot of the impact zones have already been remediated through restoration monies and Superfund monies. Federal chat pile in Park Hills, National has, Bonne Terre has. And one thing that you have to understand, what I said to DNR and U.S. Fish and Wildlife is we want, from an airplane view, when you look down on our area, you don't see that scarring of the land that took place from past mining practices. That was the intention of the judge during the settlement, is to restore those. But do understand there are many, many citizens who grew up in those communities, who grew up climbing those chat piles, that did not want them disturbed. And so those Superfund sites have been, a lot of them have been finalized, a lot of them have just a few more phases to go and then they're done. So a lot of those chat piles in St. Francis County are the way they're going to look because the citizens said we don't want them totally eliminated down to the ground, down to the original topography. And so they were left, some of them with just the caps taken off and then capped with rocks, because citizens wanted them to. But yes, this is the same, some of those are listed in the settlement, but they've already been restored through prior funding.
Representative Black.
Yes.
Have you considered denying the Department of Natural Resources as well as the Missouri Department of Conservation from the ability to even purchase any land in the future without approval by the Missouri General Assembly?
Yes, those are components that are part of bills that have been introduced this year to try to stop them from land purchases. This one wouldn't have done any good anyway because it is a federal judgment. It's under federal jurisdiction with trustees. It's not just completely at the discretion of those two state departments that you've mentioned, Conservation and Natural Resources. But we have legislation that has been heard in committee that would limit the ability of those departments to purchase land. This is a very unique situation, and will it ever happen again? Who knows?
Are you familiar with Department of Natural Resources, Our Missouri Waters, and the watershed approach to land management in the state of Missouri?
Well, I'm familiar with the Big River watershed. Are you talking about the private groups of citizens who've come together over the last 7 or 8 years to talk about the ASARCO settlement?
Now, the Department of Natural Resources is using an entire watershed approach that I'll get into a little bit later to manage all of the
Are you a
land.
speaker today?
Yes.
Oh, well then, share that when you're up here.
I wanted to know if you knew, so you're leaving and I'll
Yeah,
contact you later.
actually, we know that part of the Asarco settlement, why the monies could be spent in Oregon is because there was a prior study years ago by the University of Missouri that established that part of Missouri into a common ecological zone as Southeast Missouri. We're also, that's part of the, what I've asked the environmental attorneys to look at. Was that study that put Oregon County in with us even valid and accurate? Because we don't share any watersheds with that particular region. And so that's the avenues that we're looking at, is the validity of that environmental study that put us in the same zone. Yes, back there?
How do the land purchases benefit the remediation work?
The land purchases don't benefit the remediation part at all. What they do is they devise part of that circular that says you have to have compensatory or compensating land for these lands have been damaged. There's not a whole lot we can do to them, but what they're saying is we can compensate by buying a similar type of property, whether it be thousands of acres, somewhere else, and set that aside for future generations so that we have a similar ecological area protected. But we don't want that in St. Francis County. We want our remediation to take place. Any other questions? If you're back there, all right. Well, I appreciate it. I hate that I have to look down, but boy, these lights are bright now. I know what it's like to be a singer up on stage. But I won't oblige you with that, and I'm going to take off. I appreciate you letting me be here today. And if you do have additional questions, feel free to send those to my office. I'd be more than happy to respond to you and let you know what's taking place with the legislative process. Oh, and one question, the bill that passed in the House did pass with bipartisan support. It's been heard in Senate committee. It's Robert Ross's bill. It has not passed the Senate committee at this time. It has to pass the committee and then on to the Senate floor. So that's where that bill is. Yes.
Yeah, it's been some good work. Thank you so much, Senator, for coming. Orange County Commissioner Skaggs, is he around? Start making your way up here. And yeah, I think a lot of budgets need cut. That's the first thing, you really wake people up, you start cutting their money.
That's right.
You know, and my frustration is you have so many representatives that talk the talk, but yet they keep funding all these agencies and giving them all the money, and it's like, you know, if we're at war, why are we funding the enemy? You know, amen. Especially the EPA on the federal level, you got all these representatives like, yeah, we need to do something with the EPA, and the budget comes along and they just pass the budget and give them everything they want, and then they come back to their constituents and say, yeah, we're really against this and we're against that, and they didn't do anything when it came down to it. Okay, I'm done with that. Come on up, Jack. Thank you. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure to be here today. My neighbor county, Madison, San Francis County. My story is going to be a little bit different today than the two previous speakers. I'm going to talk specifically about Asarco Bloodle Plant. I live in Iron County. I'm the fourth generation there. I have a farm on F Highway and I raise black Angus cattle. Been in the mining business for 40 years. Currently own a quarry in Wayne County where I produce ag lime for agriculture. During that 40 years, I've been involved in many different things. Served on the National Stone Association. Served on the National Stone Association Safety Environmental Committees. I've served 2 terms as state commissioner under Governor Carnahan. I started working on parks and soil sales tax in 1982. So some of the things that I've been involved in the last 40 years has made my compassion for this issue even stronger. Being in Iron County and being in the mining business for over 40 years, the last 15 years of that experience in the mining business, I traveled the United States. I had 5 quarries, California, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and in New Jersey. So I've had a wide range of experiences when it comes to mining. But I also served as the president of the Southeast Missouri Lead Mine Association. And during that time is exactly when this ASARCO bankruptcy occurred. So I know a little bit about the law settlement. The bankruptcy occurred because ASARCO went out of business. And they owned multiple mine sites across the United States. Missouri was not the only state that was involved in this lawsuit settlement. The settlement was actually heard in district court in the state of Texas. The settlement in itself gave EPA in the state of Missouri to address mining legacy left over from lead mines. Now, I'm not pro-mining, as you can tell. I've been doing this for 40 years. I make my living doing this. A lot of people in our region make their living in mining. But mining is not forever. It goes away. The pit goes empty, you run out of reserves, the market crashes, China starts a smelter, and all of a sudden you're out of business. So this is not the only time that this is going to occur in the state of Missouri. We also have what they call the viburnum lead trend, which runs in Iron County, Washington County, Iron County, a little bit in Dent, and a lot in Reynolds. So this is not the only time we're going to be faced with this issue. This issue will be back. And what happens today with this issue will set the trend for the future. So if they're allowed to divert the money, and I understand Linda Black's comment, I understand circular law. I was the safety environmental manager for a large company. So I understand the environmental regulations very, very well. And she is correct. The circular law allows the federal government or the state government to buy land as compensatory damages to the land that was destroyed. Now, I live in Iron County, and I used to drive through Glover, Missouri every day with my father to the sawmill. He cut logs for a living. We had a cattle farm. Not very many people in this room, except for Mr. Tim Huff, is going to understand what used to be at Glover. Glover used to be a community, a great community. The Suttons had a store there. The McHenrys had a store. Grover's had a store. Once the ASARCO plant came in, there was about a 4,000 acre land that they owned. All of those businesses are gone. I watched them load houses off the foundations onto flatbed trucks and move them out of the community. This is something that's not just happening, folks. If they want to talk about where they can spend $18.5 million from the ASARCO settlement, I know where they can spend it. They don't have to go very far. It's called Glover, Missouri. That's where the damages have occurred. The damages have occurred in San Francisco County. They've occurred in Madison County with the city, Fredericktown's drinking city lake, which provides their drinking water. The Big River watershed, the Flat River watershed, the Big Creek watershed, where I live, and also the Viburnum. This ASARCO settlement agreement was negotiated by the Attorney General in 2005, which was Jay Nixon. Now, I'm not here to attack the governor of our state. I'm here to disagree with the governor of our state, and I've been disagreeing very loudly on many occasions. I think it's wrong, as most people do. There is a legal way you can approach things, and there's a right way to approach things. Legally, they can get this done. Is it right? I disagree with it. And in this country and in this state, based on what happened 200 years ago at Baltimore, at Fort Henry, which I've been there before, sacred place. In this country, we have a right to speak up, and we have a right to disagree. Now, sometimes I support Nixon, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I support Jason Smith, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I support Senator Blunt, sometimes I don't. That's what makes this a great country. We don't always have to agree on everything, but we can stand at a mic and disagree and talk loudly on the things that we disagree with. This particular case, in my opinion, what they've done is just wrong. In Iron County, we have projects. We've submitted those projects. Those projects have been deemed non-qualified. Non-qualified through those works. But we can spend almost $10 million in Oregon County on 5,400 acres that's qualified. Oregon County's not even near our watershed. I've worked with Patrick Ledgerwood, who's the presiding commissioner in Oregon County. We worked together on House Bill 2187, which is what Linda Black and Gary Romine spoke about. I testified on that bill. We also took a resolution to the County Commissioners Association of Missouri. We got that resolution passed, unanimous support for House Bill 2187, which requires DNR to sell that land. The amendment that Senator Romine spoke about, the amendment that we attached to it, brings the money back to the Southeast Regional Planning Commission. And it's a 3-commission area. And that money comes back here for counties to submit and cities and municipalities to submit projects to for funding. Now, of the settlement agreement, there was about $75 million involved for the state of Missouri. $37.5 million went for lead tailings. Most of that was in San Francisco County. The other $34.4 million was given to the Department of Interior, and it was broken out in 2 pieces. Fish and Wildlife got to vote 50%, DNR got to vote the other 50%. So there's about $20 million in each one of those pots by the time they collected interest from the SARCO on the settlement funds. Now, can you imagine if you were a representative of the SARCO after settling the lawsuit? They asked, by the way, in this lawsuit, which I have it with me, they asked in this lawsuit for damages of $400 million. They negotiated it down to $75 million. But if you were the owner, board of directors of the SARCO and found out that $20 million of that was buying land in Oregon County for a state park and not addressing the lead cleanup and the damage areas where it was occurring, would you be happy? It's not right, folks. It's not right. I'm not here to argue the political world between Republicans or Democrats, or Libertarians or Constitutionists. That's not what my game is. My game is that I represent Iron County. We've got lead mining going on in Iron County today. That's going to dissipate in 10, 20, 30 years from now. What's going to happen then? Are they going to take this money and go buy land in Kansas? Possible. It's the precedents that we set today. My father always told me, make sure what you do today, because every action deserves a response. Their action deserves my response, that it's not right what you're doing. It's not right to take the money from the lead belt area, from my neighbor, from my school district, from my home, from my county, and spend it in Oregon. Now, if you're an audience member from Oregon County, I don't mean to disrespect you in any way, form, or fashion. But have you ever sat in a lead mine? Have you ever been underground? Have you ever watched the smoke boil out of the stack? Have you ever watched the fish do not take order put on your stream where you play, where you live, where you fish? I doubt it, because you're not even close to us. However, we're in this fight together. I'm very concerned of what's going to happen. They paid an enormous amount of money for this land, way above market value. Even if our bill passes, I don't know if there's anybody who can afford to buy it. But they have another $8.5 million. They haven't spent that yet. Maybe our bill will prevent that from occurring. I've spoke with the governor's staff on many occasions. I've invited the governor down. We had a tour of Madison County, San Francisco County. He's been to the Fredericktown City Lake. He's been to Bonehoe. Nobody can ever get to Iron County because you can't find your way there from here. We're just so small. Only 10,000 people live there, and we're poor. We're very poor. These lead mines, once they leave, our school systems are gone. I was the president of our local school board in South Iron, R1. It's in Annapolis, Missouri. When Sarko went bankrupt, we lost $160 million of assessment. That's a lot of money when it comes to education. We survived. We tightened our belt. We cut out programs. We cut out vo-tech schools. We cut out family service classes. We cut back on extracurricular activities. And we just teach the basics now. Once the lead mine is gone in Viburnum will disappear. Now, my county, my citizens have supported lead mining and mining their entire life. It's a way that we live. We understand that. But for them to take the money after they're gone to Oregon County to buy land is just wrong. It may be legal. They may be able to do that, but it doesn't make it right. The last time I looked, people of Iron County is just as important as the people in Oregon County. The last time I looked, we're all pretty equal. We all stand for something. We're all here today because we stand for something. What I'd like to ask you to do today, what can you do? It's very simple. I have pages and pages of speeches and letters and documents and maps. You know, it's very funny. One of their very maps, and I won't go into detail on it, but one of the maps shows on their webpage of the Asarco Settlement Restoration Act, a sign. It's this sign right here. You won't be able to see it. At least, you know, I won't be fitting. It's a sign of Viburnum, Missouri, the lead capital of the world. We submitted a project for Viburnum. It doesn't fit the requirements. The only thing that fits the requirements is buying more land. I disagree with the governor's stance. I disagree with DNR's position. It may be legal, but it ain't right. It may be legal to do a lot of things in this country, but to your neighbors, it's wrong. I have more respect to my neighbors than I do the law. If my neighbor needs help, I'll be there. I might have to break the speed limit to get there to help you, sir, but I'll be there. We are a great country, we are a great state, and we are a great 8th congressional district. What we need today, what you can do today, when you leave here, you all have a legislator, you all have a state senator, or you can pick up the phone and call the governor's office. They have email links right on their websites. Send them an email. Tell them that you stand with Iron County today. Tell them that this is wrong what they are doing. I ask you to stand, and that's my only reason here today, is to tell you a little bit about what Iron County has done, what we've went through, and what we're faced with. I'll stand with any of my neighbors if it's the right thing to do. That's what I ask for you to do today. That's what you can do for us. What can I do for you? I can continue speaking at the mic. I know this issue from the front to the back, all 372 pages. Can they do it? Yes. Is it right? No. It is not. So I ask you today, if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer them. But the last thing I'd like to say before I leave the podium, stand with us, stand with Oregon County, stand with Iron, St. Francis, Madison, Reynolds. That's where the lead mining's been. That's where the legacy is going to be left in stars. That's where the money needs to be spent. Thank you very much. I'll answer any questions.
I just want to state that I'm from Oregon County, and
Yes.
But they, I don't know, they're very gentle people, they're not activists, and they're not standing up, they just feel resigned to the fact that, well, we can't do anything about it. Except for a few.
Thank you, ma'am. I can assure you that Patrick Ledgerwood has your back. I've worked with Patrick on this issue from day one. He's the presiding commissioner there. Representative Ross, I spoke with him, Senator Cunningham. He and I testified together on House Bill 2187. So Oregon County is very well represented. During the public comment period, there was 130 signatures on a petition from Oregon County. There was over 30 personal letters from individuals that live in our area. There was about 40 letters from elected officials, municipalities, mayors, and aldermen. But there was 540 form letters from an arm of the Sierra Club. So guess who got the most votes on comment period? Yes, Tori.
When I was involved with our industry association, we often did requests for comments to the FCC. And those comments were always made public. I made a comment when asked for the request for comment in October. I have never seen a request for comment where the comments were not made public. Do you know why the comments weren't made public?
I don't know, ma'am. I got a copy of those comments. I don't know if I have them with me or not, but we got them from the agency, and we took the comments and we broke them down into groups so we could just aggregate the data. I didn't see the comments per se, but Representative Ross was able to get those, and they sent those to us. So we were able to get them. I don't know why they wouldn't make public comment or private out there on the internet. We should have put them out there.
Jim, the public comment period, I think it's just a dog and pony show. They're going to do what they want to. It's just a formality. Obviously, they make their mind up ahead of time, and I just, again, you send those in. It's important that you send them in, but again, I think it's just a formality, and they're going to do what they want to do anyway.
That's Representative Paul Fitzwater from my district. And Paul is correct. When they first had the first meeting was on a Friday afternoon in September, right before Labor Day. That was their public rollout meeting at Johnson Shut-ins in Iron County, or Reynolds County. And right after that, they had that public comment period. I think the next week I was in Paul's office, Gary's office. We met with Sarah Parker Polley. I voiced my concern then of what was taking place. And the issues that Paul refers to, I don't watch their website every day, and I'm sure Paul doesn't either. Who does? We all work, we all have families, we all got jobs. Well, it's on our website, you should have seen it. Well, that's not what I call public notice. So, any other questions? Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Paul Fitzwater, representative in the Missouri House. And Jerry King with the Ozarks down here. They do a good job down there in Shannon County in that region. These are a lot of the same issues. PRC that I'm involved with, the Voice of the Ozarks, we're on a lot of the same issues, and appreciate him coming. Now we are going to move along, and we're going to go to a wonderful lady, a wonderful patriot that I've been blessed to know over the last few years. And I'd like to welcome Cynthia Davis to the stage.
I am blessed to be with some good people here. You can tell we're all good folks. There we go. How about this? Yes. I brought a PowerPoint today, yes, to thrill and delight you. How to have rights. And my name is Cynthia Davis. Next slide. Just to let you know a little bit about who I am. Next. whoopsies. One before that, my introduction. Anyway, my husband is with me today, and he does not get to come with me on every event I'm at, but I want to give a little shout out to him. In fact, for 8 years I was in the Missouri State Legislature, and before that I was in local government. I do a weekly show called Homefront, and I'm the executive director for the Center for Marriage Policy. What makes my husband special, though, is his name is Bernie. I was driving down the road last week, and he does not get much credit. He is like the unsung hero of the whole operation. And there was a car in front of me, and it had a bumper sticker. And it said, "Vote for Bernie 2016. Next slide. They didn't say which Bernie. Let it be my husband. So what do you think the problem is? I go with that. That's a good one. Let's move to the next slide. These are the symptoms that we've got a problem, okay? Our country voted for Barack Obama not once but twice.
I didn't.
Donald Trump is the front runner, and most people cannot even tell you what the sales tax rate is. I went to California last week, and I forgot to pack my nightgown, so I had to make an emergency trip to the store. And as I was buying it, and the woman told me the total, I said, "What is your sales tax rate here?" And she looked at me with this blank stare and said, "Nobody's ever asked me that before. I have no idea." Folks, that's just a symptom of the problem. The people want to let government do what it's doing, and we won't ask any questions. Next slide. What does bind us together? I can feel that there's something binding us together here in this room today. But I also want you to think about a comment Abraham Lincoln made in his first inaugural address. He said, "The Union is much older than the Constitution. The faith of all of the then 13 states expressly plighted and engaged that it should be perpetual." There's something beyond that transcends just the printed word. It's our values in our heart. Next slide. So what does home look like? And I have to say, if any of you have heard some of the political speeches, I've so far heard Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Ben Carson, and there are a myriad of others say, "But that's not us." Well, who is us? What is us? What are we? How dare you speak for me? Next slide. What is the American spirit? It is that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Yeah, that's us, folks. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And as we said at the beginning of the meeting, we believe in one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So when we see something happen that does not look like justice, it violates who we are. So I want to talk to you about the Constitution, because that's really a brilliant beginning point. And Article 1, Section 1 says, "All legislative powers therein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of the Senate and House of Representatives." Well, like, what I love about this is it's so amazingly simple. You know what? It's simple enough that I can understand it, you can understand it, you don't have to be an attorney to explain it, describe it, interpret it. It really says that all the laws. Now, some of you are wondering, what does all mean? And the answer is, it means all. So, all laws means that Congress does not, if Congress didn't pass a bill authorizing it, then it cannot be a legitimate law. The federal government cannot do it if it was not made into law by Congress. Next slide. So here's what Congress cannot do. Article 1, Section 8 is the constitutionally authorized list of what Congress can do. And guess what? The Bureau of Land Management, the Department of Natural Resources, and the EPA aren't even on that list. They're not mentioned in the Constitution anywhere. So let's talk about what that means with land ownership. Why would the government own land? Article 1, Section 8 does say that the land can be purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So we've got millions of acres in this country of land that's controlled by the Bureau of Land Management. And guess what? I'm not seeing any of those acres being used to build forts, dockyards, and magazines, arsenals, or other needful buildings. So there you have it. It's in the Constitution. What can Congress do? If these governmental bureaucracies are a creation of Congress, then Congress can uncreate them. So at the bare minimum, if Congress doesn't want to abolish these Frankenstein-like monsters, they can at least cut the funding. It's amazing what can happen to an overbloated, obese bureaucracy as soon as the funding goes away. Facebook, and it really describes where we are today, not to depress anybody, but it says you are free as long as we control your resources, as long as we control your education, your currency, your internet, military justice, and your land. How free really are we? Don't ever let anybody get away with saying we have 3 co-equal branches of government, because they're not co-equal. There are 3 branches, but of the 3 branches, if there's anything going on in our federal government that you don't approve of, blame the House of Representatives, because they provided the funding that enabled that activity to go on. Then remember to blame we the people. Sorry if I offend anybody, but we're the ones who elect the members of the House once every 2 years. We can control this by picking better people. I put a picture of some sheep in here. Now, I live in St. Charles County, which is a very densely populated area. But I did have 3 sheep at one time in a very built-up, well, here's what happened. My kids had 3 sheep. And then when the city of O'Fallon told my kids they couldn't have 25 chickens, I thought we better get rid of the sheep before they say anything about that. Nevertheless, what's really special is all the lessons we can learn, because you've heard of people being compared with sheep before. And even though it's not flattering, I got a little bit of trivia recently that maybe not all of you know about, but did you know that a jackrabbit can cause a stampede among the sheep? It's true. The sheep panic panic, they get scared, then one starts getting freaked out, and the rest of them get freaked out, and they don't know why they're all nervous, but one of them started it, and if one's nervous, we're all gonna be nervous. And that's what is going on with these bureaucracies. We've got a jackrabbit over here, the BLM or the DNR or the EPA, or I can list all kinds of initials, but what's happening is they are trying to freak us out. And a lot of people get like scared, not realizing that a jackrabbit is way smaller than a sheep. We are the people, we're in charge, we're bigger than them. And there's no reason for us to get nervous because the power still is in our ability. Next slide. It's like parents and kids. Now, I do have 7 children, so I'm just going to give you this story, and some of you in here may have children too. But if a parent allows his child to commit a crime, whose fault is it, really? If the parent didn't mean for the child to steal, he needs to rein him in. You can't go over to Walmart, have your child shoplift, bring the goods out to the car and say that's okay. That's what our Congress has done. They've delegated all the responsibility to the bureaucracies. The bureaucracies are harassing the people, and then the Congress is saying it wasn't me that did it. I actually prepared this slide before I knew we were going to have the presentation about the Star-Spangled Banner. But as the rockets are going off around us, and I'm using the Lavoie Finicum story, I'm using every egregious act, and there's a list. Yeah, we can argue about what's happening in Iron County and Oregon County, and you know what? It's only a matter of time before it's going to be in every county and in every neighborhood and everywhere where we all live. Those are the rockets exploding, but as they're exploding, we're finding the flag is still there because we still are there, and the spirit of America is still coming out. It's up to us to let them know, oh yes, our flag is still here. Go ahead with your fireworks and you try and explode our country, and let's see what's going to last in the end. It's pretty quick and simple. Number 1, fire Congress. Number 2, elect constitutional sheriffs in your county. And number 3, read and understand and apply the Constitution. It's going to be okay. That's our birthright. That's our document. That's everything we have to rest on. And it worked back then and it will still work now. All we have to do is wake up and use it. You can find me real easy, plus I have cards at my table. It's real simple, CynthiaDavis.net. Sign up for my newsletter. I send out a newsletter every week to inform and educate. You can subscribe to our podcast. Even Bob has been on it before. Right, Bob? He's been a guest. And you can donate to keep the show going, and then we've got a book table over here. So thank you, Bob.
With a lot of these kinds of issues, and I learned a lot from Marie, and she's got some good information on lead and some other things. Marie Lassiter, come on up, Marie.
Thanks, Bob, and I'm thrilled to see Jeff Polk here because he doesn't know it, but he's my hero right now, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a few minutes. I wanted to reiterate it, I had it in my talking points, just that, we're responsible for our government, each of us here, and, I wish there were more people filling the seats and feeling that responsibility, because it's really up to us when we elect our legislators to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do or sending them home and getting someone that will follow the will of their constituents.
Bob, thank you very much for that glowing introduction, and I'm glad that I have put in enough effort now to gain your respect. It's two times I've run for office, Let me clarify that. Well, I've entitled my talk today, I'm going to be the first speaker this afternoon, and then I'm going to be MC and bring on the other speakers. I've titled my talk this afternoon, Moat Parks Make Me Mad. And if you didn't arrive mad today, I hope you're mad after I'm finished. And if not by then by the end of the day. So, you remember these folks over here, the EPA? EPA is down, they're into everything. That bottle of water that you're drinking, they're there. That car you drove, they're there. Your gasoline you put in that car, they're there. Clothes you're wearing, EPA's involved. There's no aspect of your life that isn't touched by the EPA. Are they perfect? I don't think so. Next slide, please. Well, last year, our Missouri Department of Natural Resources put together a 9-point management plan. That's involving water. Who did they use as the go-to source of their information? It says there on their plan that incorporates the most recent U.S. Environmental Protection Agency EPA guidance. I'm not sure they use the right source. Okay, I want to lay a little bit of background, and first, one of the things I want to point out, we have a Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and we have a Missouri Department of Conservation. These are two totally different agencies, okay? Missouri Department of Conservation is funded by 1/8 cent sales tax that's attached directly to the Constitution. As Paul Fitzwater mentioned earlier, the legislature can't touch them. They don't control their purse strings. On the other hand, with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, the legislature does control the purse strings. Now, a little bit more about the Department of Natural Resources. We're not ready for that slide yet. Back up one. Okay. The Missouri Department of Natural Resources has several different divisions. What we're concerned with today is the Division of Environmental Quality. That's an enforcement division, and we're concerned today about the Parks Division, because it's the park land, the land that they're trying to or have acquired in Oregon County and in Shannon County for parks. Okay. But I'm going to marry the two of these together. They're all in the Department of Natural Resources. I'm going to relate them together, but I want to go give you a little bit more background before we get there. Okay, so this that you're seeing right now is the total operating budget for the state. The point that I want to make here is that 1/3 of the pie down there, 33% of the state budget comes from the federal government. Next slide, please. Okay, now you can't see that down there, but the important point I brought out there, Missouri Department of Natural Resources funding is pretty much in step with the whole state, and that is 31.8% federal funding, which I call bribery and control. Next slide. Okay, this is the home page of the Department of Natural Resources. Now, I was hoping that I would be able to read this, but that's not true. I can't even read. What I'm trying to get to is the mission and the vision for Missouri that the Department of Natural Resources has. Basically, what it says is that their mission is to provide clean water and clean environment, make sure that all of our environmental resources are kept pure and clean for us. Next slide. Okay. So again, this goes down into the Department of Natural Resources website and shows you this. We're talking about now the Department of Environmental Quality, and it says right there, enforcement. That's their deal. Okay. Next slide. Okay, blowing up a little bit of that part of their website, it says department staff follow the compliance manual. Okay, that sounds a little bit ominous. Next slide. Okay, what do they do as far as enforcement? Well, one of the things they control is waste management. It's one, we're concerned really today about solid waste management. That's where we're going to drill down. Okay, it says dumping is illegal, bold letters. And then it's got a little picture down there that shows you how awful dumps are, and they are. And I've had to deal with these things firsthand on client land. I'm a forester. I work out in the woods and for a lot of clients, sometimes large clients, and you know, sometimes we have problems with dumping. So it's a valid problem, and we do need some regulation there, but I think they've gone a little bit overboard, and they don't follow their own rules, as we'll see. Next slide. Okay, now, as a part of doing how they do their job, they depend upon us to help them out. Okay? So, here's another section from their website that says how to report illegal dumping. Okay? Next slide. We'll drill down on this. It says, you may remain anonymous. Okay? There's a little problem with that. Next slide. From our state constitution, in the Bill of Rights, section 18, rights of the accused in criminal prosecutions, it says that the accused shall have the right to, amongst other things, meet the witnesses against him face to face. Now, that is also in the United States Constitution. You have the right to face your accusers face to face. Let me kind of bring in the Department of Conservation on this a little bit now too, in that if you go to their Operation Game Thief section on their website, you'll see similar verbiage. It says on Operation Game Thief, if you even suspect that your neighbor may have violated the wildlife code, you may call Operation Game Thief anonymously. And I've got some personal experiences with that too, because I've got some land that I lease on behalf of my clients, and one day the lessee sends me a picture and he says, what are the wildlife wardens doing out on our lease land? I don't know. So I investigated it and found out there had been an anonymous call. The anonymous call had said, well, there's somebody out there baiting turkeys. Problem is, it was still legal to have your bait out. So what were they doing out there? Okay. Next slide. Okay, now we're getting into the solid waste portion of the Environmental Quality Division's duties. I wanted to bring that, and now I'm going to drill down in that. Next slide, please. Solid waste, it says section 2060.24, Missouri Solid Waste Management Law allows for the assessment of penalties up to $1,000 per day or each part thereof. Doesn't have to be a whole day. Excuse me. And I personally know somebody down there where I come from in Wayne County who was taking some construction materials, and he was taking it out on his property and dumping it there. And he was fine. He was penalized. Next slide, please. Okay, enforcement and illegal dumping video surveillance. This is one of the ways that they do their job. Next slide. It says, and this is from that particular section there. It says, litter is both an eyesore and a health hazard and provides a home for pests to serve. I'm bringing up, there we go. I can't read all that, but as a result of trash litter, whether you refer to it as trash, litter, garbage, solid waste, this is important here, cannot be dumped onto private or public lands. Okay, you can't dump litter, waste, whatever, on private or on public lands, or the waterways of the state of Missouri. Okay, it sounds reasonable. Let's go. Continue. Okay, now I want to bring us to the Parks Division of the Department of Natural Resources. In particular, let's go to Sam Baker Park. Sam Baker Park is about 30 miles south of here. I live very close to Sam Baker Park, take my grandkids out there. We've our family has spent a long time at Sam Baker Park. I want to draw your attention down to that portion on the right side where it says advisories. Let's take a closer look at that. That's like, okay, advisories, and it's got a link up there. It says caution advised on trails, Sam A. Baker State Park. Okay, let's click on that link and follow it, see where we go. What's the advisories? Next slide. Okay, it says caution on trails, Sam Baker State Park. It says users may come across obstacles such as erosion or fallen trees that have fallen during recent storms. And it says repairs will be made as soon as possible. Yeah, right. That's like, this is my grandson. This is last Saturday. And since I hiked that trail a lot, and I have over the years, I can tell you, he is sitting directly over the trail, and that tree has been there for years. I can also tell you as a professional forester, that tree's been there a while, because all the bark is gone, and the sapwood is starting to slough off. Next slide. That's a picture of the same log from a different perspective. And I just wanted to throw this one in because you can see that little orange tag up there on the little shagbark hickory tree. That tells you you're on the trail in case you were to get off or in case there's snow on the ground. Next slide. Now I know that in times past they have maintained the trails because you can see on the left-hand side of this slide there's a cut log. It's a nice clean cut. And then right beside it is another log, just in the same condition as the log we just looked at. All the bark is gone, the sapwood is sloughing off. They have not maintained this section of trail in a long time. This is just a little ways up the trail from the log we just saw. So there's a lot of logs across the trails out there. Next slide, please. Okay. Now the park has its own park management manual. And this is a section of it. Refuse and trash. No person shall be deposited on any part of any state park or historic site. Any garbage, refuse, waste, fruit, vegetables, foodstuffs, boxes, cans, bottles, jars, paper, other litter materials, obnoxious materials, keep that in mind, except in containers or places designated for these purposes. Designated for these purposes. Next slide. A part of the Sam Baker's web page, they want to really point out what they're proud of. And they're really proud of their 4,420 acre Mudlick Mountain Wild Area and the 1,370 acre Mudlick Natural Area. Come on, let's go see what they're proud of. All right, this again is last Saturday. We're about to enter the natural area. Next slide. That looks like a dump. There's old bathtubs. There's discarded grills. Yeah, it looks like some old posts. They probably had creosote or some nasty material in them for preservative. Next slide. Looks like some old concession stands there. Some more posts. Next slide. Okay, you know those garbage cans you have at parks, they've got the little lever so that you don't have to touch it with your hands. That's what you got there. Bunch of discarded garbage cans. And what you're looking at kind of in between them, that's actually a set of urinals. Next slide. What do you do with your picnic tables once they're not so pretty anymore? Well, take them up on the mountain. Next slide. This is actually a small barrel, not a regular sized barrel. It's kind of barrel-like. And it had been covering an open tile. Now, I didn't get everything, take pictures of everything in the area, but in this particular area, there's a lot of foundations. There formerly were a lot of buildings, and there's even some old roads and driveways. And beside, either in or very close to all these old foundations, there's a lot of these old tiles. We'll get to that. We're going to look at a few more of those a little later. Next slide, please. This is a small barrel-like thing about yay big, okay, and so wide. You can't see it too good on the screen here, but that's some nasty looking material in there. I don't know what it was to begin with, but it looks like it might be some hazardous material. Next slide. This appears to me to be a discarded old 5-gallon bucket of tar, or who knows what was in it to begin with. A little bit more information. In this area, there's the old platform for a fire tower, which was at a lower elevation than the one that is currently there. And all these old foundations, those were it was kind of like a park headquarters there. Okay, so that's what was here. While they were out there dumping the picnic tables and the hazardous material and whatever else they dumped up there, the garbage cans and minerals, I think they had some recreational beverage. Next slide. This is just a bunch of old cans and stuff, formerly contained food and drinks, and there's even some aluminum, corrugated aluminum there. Next slide. Kind of looks like an old chamber pot, I think. Been there a while. Next slide. There we have the platform for an old shower stall. It doesn't look like it's serviceable anymore. Next slide. There's a vent, looks like a vent pipe to me. Next. I'm not mechanically inclined, maybe somebody could help me out with that one. It looks like some sort of a burner, maybe something, what you would with a boiler or something, but anyway, don't need it anymore. Hold it up on the mountain. What do you do when you don't need the road signs or street signs, or they become, not so pretty anymore? Hold them up on a mountain. Here's another view of all those old urinals and the garbage cans. It's an up-close view, so you can actually see what they are. At some point in time, they decided that they would replace the mattresses in the cabins. So what do you do when you don't need the mattresses? What are you going to do with these old mattresses? Haul them up on the mountain. It looks like an old slide. Next. Some old sinks. Those look like they could be serviceable. Not pretty, but serviceable. I don't think the window's serviceable anymore. Next. And definitely not the old washer. Next. Wheels seen better days. I don't think I want to put that on my truck. Another shot of my grandson. Now these, it's a kind of interesting. I know that those timbers are treated wood, but they've got sharp corners and edges, as you can see. They don't appear that they have been there a long time. Okay, and just off the side of the screen, I did not get a separate picture of it, but there's a stack of cedar logs, crisscross, and the bark is still on them, so it hasn't been there a real long time. And just off the screen on the left-hand side is a power line that runs up to the current fire tower. And it is maintained, so they go right through here every year to maintain it. They see it, they know it's there. There's an old road, a service road, that goes right close to this, close enough that you can see it. So we know that succeeding generations of park superintendents and staff have known this was here and decided to do nothing. Next slide. Some more old grills. Next. And now, let's finish with some of these tiles. There's an open tile, and like I said, they're all over the place up there, either in these old foundations or very near. I kind of think I know what they did with them. Next slide. There's another one. Keep going. Another one. And this one, I'm going to show you the next slide. It isn't going to be very clear, but it's actually looking down inside this one, because I heard something and I looked down in it. The water is running. You can see the water running at the bottom of this right now. I know we've had some rain, some snow, so that's probably why you can see it. But there's water running at the very bottom, it's just a few feet down, and you can hear the water running. So what would Department of Natural Resources, Environmental Quality, what would they be saying if we had open tiles on our property? Next slide. Okay, this slide shows you the relative location of where that dump is. Next slide. Okay, this is where my slideshow ends. This is your Missouri Department of Natural Resources, Parks Division, at your service. So we know that they're not maintaining our trails, they're not maintaining their parks. We can see that they're violating their own rules, and now they want more parks. Thank you very much. We can't keep up with everything. Ike does a really fine job of keeping up with Agenda 21 and the globalist attempt to take over our rights and our lands. Ike Skelton, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me down here. It's all the way down at the bottom. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Right down there, recap presentation. The next one up. Yeah, they're right there. Thank you. Well, again, I appreciate you having me down this afternoon, and I hope that what I'm going to tell you today is just a little taste of what Agenda 21 and Sustainable Development really is. And while hearing everybody else here and having these represent, by the way, are there any office holders in the room? Good. No, I don't mean it that way, but we're going to get into some of that a little bit later on, because this is your government. And it is because they tend to be able to get away with what they want to, because we're not up there quite keeping an eye on them like maybe we probably should. And that's a tough thing to do, because we all have jobs. And at the end of this, I want to talk to you a little bit about how maybe we can be a little more effective about what we do. I wanted to start off with this: the protection of planet Earth, the survival of all species, and sustainability of our ecosystems is more than a mission. It is my religion and my dharma. This is Randra Pekuri, former head of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. When he says that it is his religion and his dharma, I assure you that's exactly what it is. In 1992, after nearly 45 years of work, some 178 nations came together to pledge adherence to a plan of societal manipulation that, if implemented as designed, would lead to the ultimate attempt of achieving global governance. Now, if you say that up in Jefferson City, which we did about 4 sessions ago, they tend to look at you. You get a couple of different reactions. One reaction is they kind of laugh a little bit and really think you're skeptical. And then the other ones, they actually quite mean and hateful. And that's where the tinfoil hat crowd comes from. They definitely want to label you as that and some crazies and wackos. But I find it very, very interesting that the overwhelming majority of office holders in Jefferson City have never one time come to a briefing or any kind of a presentation that we with Missourians of Agenda 21 against Agenda 21 have put on to learn this stuff, because it is true, it is out there, and it is happening today in every single thing that you do. I can assure you that. I'm going to show you some how. Next slide, please. And what they don't know about is Agenda 21. It says Agenda 21, this is in the preamble, is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally. All organizations of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups in every area in which human impacts on the environment. I don't know about you, but I can't think of too much of anything that I do of a single day that doesn't impact the environment in some capacity. And that is exactly what they wanted to attain. This is an entirely all-encompassing plan of action that they want to take, and they are absolutely implementing it. I'm not going to be able to get into the full background of the history of Agenda 21 today, but it is vital to know that history and to understand the documents and its purpose. It's crucial to understand the means to their end. Next slide, please. So they had lots of different meetings around the world I talked about there, and one of the meetings they had, and this is going to be very important, is Habitat 1. Next slide, or hit it again. There we go. It was known as the UN Habitat Conference on Human Settlements. It was held in Vancouver, Canada in 1976. There were 64 recommendations for national action. It was also known as the Vancouver Action Plan. Now this didn't have any force of law or any authority to it, but it was kind of an idea of where they wanted to go. And to give you an idea of who these folks are, next, go ahead and hit it again. We'll be able to show you what they're talking about. Land, because of its unique nature and the crucial role it plays in human settlements, cannot be treated as an ordinary asset, controlled by individuals, and subject to the pressures and inefficiencies of the market. Private land ownership is also a practical instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, and therefore contributes to social injustice. If unchecked, it may have major obstacles in the planning and implementation of development schemes. Social justice, urban renewal and development, the division of decent dwellings and healthy conditions for the people only can be achieved if land is used in the interest of society as a whole. If you read that right there, you should know automatically that everyone that is involved with this issue does not believe that you should own private land. Before America came around, there wasn't any private land ownership. As a matter of fact, all the kings owned land. Even the princes and dukes didn't own land. It was kind of given to them at a time. As long as they were nice to the king would let them use it for their purposes. If you made the king mad, he took your land and your titles back. Well, here we have this, America comes along, and private property ownership is one of the very most important things and sacred things that we should hold near and dear to our hearts. Now, in terms of sustainable development, which is Agenda 21, sustainable development, you're not going to hear a lot. It says in America, this term sustainable development was coined during the 1983 meeting known as the World Commission on Environment and Development. That was chaired by an individual by the name of Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was the first vice president of Socialist International, and she was the prime minister of Norway. And it first introduced this Brundtland Commission through the report Our Common Future. There's a lot of you can spend hours and days and weeks reading all of these different documents and all these different things going on. And if you do, and I absolutely encourage you to do that, you can go to the website, UN's website, it's all right there. They're not trying to hide anything, because nobody believes it's actually being done. But you can go there and you can Google it, you can check it out. I highly encourage you to have a couple of dictionaries and make sure you got plenty of screens so that you can follow all the different rabbit trails this will take you down. In America, though, unless you talk to one of us crazy folks, you won't hear the term Agenda 21. However, you will hear sustainable development is everywhere. The reason you don't hear Agenda 21 in America is after George H.W. Bush went to Rio de Janeiro along with Al Gore and signed on to Agenda 21, when they brought it back to America, they realized that they could not get that treaty passed through the Senate. And one of the big treaties was the Biodiversity Treaty. That map that we were showing around here earlier was created by a Dr. Kaufman. He has been involved in the anti-Agenda 21 and anti-biodiversity movement for quite some time. And that was an example of how the end goal for Agenda 21 and sustainable development of these folks is to move people off of the land that we have, get you compacted into smaller cities or large cities. And as Bob mentioned earlier, all of the different red and blue or yellow and green and so forth that you saw, the red area is going to be places that there will be no human contact. You will not be allowed to go into that land. The yellow will be, as Bob told you, will be very heavily regulated for you to be able to go into those parts of land. And then those little bitty green parts you saw, that's where they're going to allow us to live. Thank you very much. So But it came through to America through the President's Council on Sustainable Development. So I encourage you to go look that up. And again, we're going to, I will get with Tori and some others and try to have a multi-hour briefing down in this area somewhere where we will get into this stuff very, very deeply. The Agenda 21 document and subsequent supporting documents, plans, and implementations are voluminous. Since the actual Agenda 21 document is not mentioned nor referenced in America, office holders and bureaucrats can more easily deny its involvement in modern processes. But just so you notice here, I'll give you an example. In 2013, I was honored to coordinate the effort that stopped a federal designation of millions of acres of land affecting some 21 counties in Missouri, known as the White River Watershed National Blueway. And oh, by the way, the federal government can be beaten. You know that Agenda 21 language really does exist. Look up here, and the first excerpt is from the Blueway designating documents. National Blueways, naturally and regionally significant watersheds that are highly valued recreational, social, economic, and cultural ecological assets. So these are the areas that they want to designate this Blueway system. From the Agenda 21 document, Section 18.8, integrated water resource management is based on water is an integral part of the ecosystem, natural resource, social, and economic good. I'd like for you to look at those two statements and show me what the difference is. There isn't any difference. The wording's around a little bit. We've got, actually, they use some of the same words, social, economic, ecological. So you can see right there directly, now the Blueway designation is a federal document, but as you go through the Department of Natural Resources, any of their websites, any of their pages that you look at, you will find out that all of this sort of stuff is integrated completely and fully into what they're doing. Folks, every single individual I would gather to bet, when they went to college, they learned about sustainable development and how things had to be done. As a matter of fact, if you look at college books, that's exactly what they talk about as sustainable development. They will never mention Agenda 21 generally, but they will talk about sustainable development. And that's where all of this stuff comes from. They have been trained to do this. Our younger folks are being trained to do this. They're being trained to believe that the earth is more important than humans are. And we've got a little bit of a problem with that. Now, in the state of Missouri, next slide. Now we're going to get into a little bit of what we're really here for today. Currently, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources has come up with a watershed approach to stream management. It's basically the same thing as a Blueway. And in the state of Missouri, there are 66 watersheds all across Missouri. Their initial startup was in the Spring area, which is Jasper, Lawrence, Barton County, southwest Missouri. The Lower Grand, which is Putnam and Sullivan, and then right here in your area, the Big River watershed with Jefferson, St. Francis County, and Washington County. Next slide, please. So those were the test areas that they did first. They've been doing this now for several years. They wanted to have this implemented, and they were actually doing this while the Blueway area was designated as the Blueway down in southern Missouri. Now, they've come off of the testing processes, and they are now going to put this into place. The current focus is in these areas: Lower Grand River, Merrimack Basin, the Missouri River corridor watersheds, the Niagara River, which is my area, the Sauk, and then the Salt Basin, and of course non-point source management that Doug brought up for a minute is also a big part of this. So right now this is happening in your area. I highly encourage you to go to the Missouri Department of Natural Resources website, find out about our Missouri waters. Start involving yourself in those meetings that they're having, because they're trying to gather advisory committees. Those advisory committees are supposed to get together and tell everybody what's happening and let the DNR know what problems are. Well, I would think, I'm not quite sure how well that's going to work, seeing as how they can't figure out what's going on in their own park system that Doug just pointed out. But my bigger point here is they are using the money to create this watershed problem, or watershed issue around the entire state. The Niagara River watershed, again, in my area, is impaired. Now, I'm not going to get into it too deep, but one of the reasons you have to designate it as impaired is so you can get federal money. When you ask them in person what's wrong with it, they can't tell you what's wrong with the Niagara River. But the real point is we have some serious problems in the state of Missouri. One of them being right around the Mud Belt area, right? We also have problems up in northern Missouri where a lot of agricultural chemicals have run off into the water from croplands. And there are things that can be done. But I believe the Department of Natural Resources needs to narrowly focus on the problems that they have, the water in the water areas, and the land areas in the lead belt area, in the park that Doug was talking about, somewhere up north, some of these areas that need to focus on, not instead of spreading around all their resources around the entire state, where it does a lot less effective. The biggest thing with spreading it around over the entire state is control. Next slide, please. That might even be it. That is it. Okay. So I'm about done here. So it's really about poor management in the Department of Natural Resources. But I want to tell you, folks, there is a way of doing things. Earlier, when I asked the representative, or I believe it was Senator Romine up here, I asked him, well, have you cut the budget? Well, they're having a conversation about that, and they like to continue to have a conversation about that. Jefferson City is nearly as broken as Washington, D.C. I don't have the time to get into all the different processes, but I assure you that if we took some time, and we will, with Tori helping out and others to plan it, we'll come down here and we'll start to talk about some more of these things. You got some great folks right here in the room, Jan Farrar, Linda Reitzel, and some others. I see Alec. There's different trainings you can take. There's different things that you can do to get much more involved with our government, and we can take it back and start making them do what we want to do. I'll leave you with this one little thought. The representative said that the money through the Missouri Department of Conservation, they just don't have any control over it, and the MDC can do pretty much whatever they want to. Think about this and think if we can get it done. If we all came together and came up with a plan. How about if we dissolve the Department of Conservation and we dissolve the Department of Natural Resources?
Yes.
Now, once they're dissolved, all the laws are gone. Then you come along with the next piece of paper and you create a new agency. Because let's face it, folks, there are some things that need to be dealt with. There are issues around the state. It can be done intelligently, a lot better than they're doing it now. So think about dissolving those two agencies, coming together and have one. All those laws are gone. The money that MDC was getting is gone. We get to start fresh. We get to start it a smart way, and we get to do it the right way. Thank you very much for your time.
What's happening in our nation today, I don't know if many of you may be aware, maybe not, but as of March 1st this year, there's been 12 officers shot and killed. Now, that's an increase of 500% from last year. If you break that down to officers shot and killed, the way it comes out is there's an officer shot in this country every 22 minutes since the beginning of the year, and an officer killed in this nation every 56 hours. That's the situation we're in. I'd like to read you something, some ideas, and I'd like to get your opinion. I want you to listen to these, and if you think they would work. These are some principles. I'll go over them briefly. There's a little list, but the basic mission of the police is to prevent crime and disorder. The ability of the police to perform their duty is determined upon the public's approval of the police action. Police need the public trust in order to do their job. Number 3. Police must secure the willing cooperation of the public in voluntary observance of laws to be able to secure and maintain respect of the public. The degree of cooperation of the public that can be secured diminishes proportionally to the necessity of use of physical force. The public deplores indiscriminate use of force. We all understand why. None of us want to be touched by another person unless we're willing to be touched by another person. The more often police have to resort to force to gain compliance, the less public trust we have. Number 5, police seek and preserve public favor, not catering to public opinion, but constantly demonstrating absolute impartial service to the law. If public constantly sees partiality, favoritism, they will disrespect the law, and the police even more. There's a couple more, just bear with me. Number 6, police use physical force to the extent necessary to secure observance to the law and restore order. Only when exercising of persuasion, advice, warning, and is found to be insufficient should they use that force. Now, there's a couple more, but let me end with these last two. The police are the public, and the public are the police. That means each and every one of us in our communities are responsible for what happens in our communities. come to this nation, I'm at this point in our time, I think, in this nation, where we just think the government can handle this, whether it's feeding me, housing me, giving me medical care, or taking care of my safety. It can't be like that. Individually, we must be responsible for our own safety, and individually, we must be, as a group, individually come together, as a group, I should say, and work together in our communities. The police can't always be there, we all know that. But if we work together with the police, it'll make a difference in this nation. The last thing I just want to say about this is the test for the police efficiency is the absence of crime and disorder, not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with it. And those sound like pretty good ideas. There's 9, I didn't read them all. But those are written by Sir Robert Peel. And some of you may know who he is. He's the founder of modern day law enforcement. And he wrote those 187 years ago. And if we would live as law enforcement officers by those today, I believe we can regain the public's trust and working together with them to make a safer community and a safer nation. That's why I became a constitutional sheriff. And I wish I knew about this organization. I told this directly to Sheriff Mack. I wish I would have known about this organization when I started policing in 1985. When I went through the academy, it was law, enforce a law, enforce a law, enforce a law. They didn't talk about, when I went to LAPD Academy, to give you a different example, I spent more time learning Spanish than I did learning about the law. That's a problem. Never did they talk about the Constitution. So let me finish up. I just got a couple more words. Just bear with me. If you're a person that holds sacred your right to peaceably assemble, as we have here today, to petition your government for the redress of grievances, which is what we're doing here today. We talk to our elected officials. To believe in freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms. If you hold sacred our Constitution and Bill of Rights, then let me tell you a little bit about the Constitution. I don't want to say Los Angeles Police Department. The Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. This was started by Sheriff Mack, Sheriff Richard Mack. He's a former Graham County, Arizona sheriff. And some of you may know his name because he filed a lawsuit against the federal government for overreach against the Brady Bill, which would have put unfunded mandates, unconstitutional mandates, on all local law enforcement in order to enforce this Brady Bill. And Sheriff Mack won that case. And since then, the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association has successfully gathered support from over 500 sheriffs throughout this nation to stand for the Second Amendment in our country. They're able to train over 300 sheriffs about what it takes to be a constitutional sheriff. I was going to say something else, but I don't want to say that. So. No, because I don't want to. Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate that. Anyway, we have, as law enforcement officers, we have the honor, the obligation to protect the constitutional rights of the citizens in our counties and cities. As lawmen and women, we must all remember the oath we took when we raised our right hand and swore to uphold the Constitution to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. How do we do this today? By standing law enforcement. We need to stand with our citizens to protect their life, to protect their property, and to keep the peace in their communities. We must do our best to ensure the rights of the citizens are not violated. When we take that oath, and it's not swearing to a piece of paper. We're not pledging to some inanimate object. We're pledging to the ideals that are on that object, that are on that piece of paper, on that document. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Mr. Skelton talked about private property. One of our founding principles, private property. These are not like rights granted to us by our government. These are rights that are given to us by our Creator. And we, as a people, came together and created government to ensure that these rights were protected. But it's not happening. Let me give you an example. I cannot recall the sheriff's name. There's a sheriff in Indiana. A couple of years ago, he has an Amish community outside in his county. And he kept having problems with the Department of Agriculture. Would come to his property, would fine him. Would come to his property, would fine him. this Amish farmer finally went to the sheriff and said, I can't stop them from coming on my property, what can you do to help me? And now a lot of sheriffs will say, well, in years past, and ones even I talked to here in Missouri, so well, there's nothing you can do once the federal government, they're the supreme power, you can't stop them. Well, this, exactly, wrong. This is what this sheriff did, is something simple. He contacted the Department of Agriculture, said, if you come back on this man's property, I'm gonna arrest you for trespassing. And then I'm gonna put you in jail, and I'm gonna book you. And it stopped that problem. But it's something simple like that. They say you can't stop it, they have the supremacy clause. No. They only have supremacy in the 19 dictated areas of the Constitution. Now, as a constitutional sheriff and peace officer, I'm supposed to know the Constitution, but I do carry one every single day. And when it wears out, I even have it marked and stuff for certain when people ask me questions. When it wears out, I get another one. I always carry one. It doesn't make me better than anybody else, it just means I don't have a really good memory. That is why it's important for county sheriffs, as the elected official of people in the county, they must be a constitutional sheriff. The sheriff is the last line of defense against tyranny, and our rights are must be precious. I thank you for your time.
Here? Yeah. You all hear me very good. Well, a number of years ago, I went on a journey. It was a journey of the mind. And when I was a young man growing up, I noticed that everybody in America, left, right, everybody in between, they would love to quote the Founding Fathers. Regardless of their political stripe, they'd quote the Founding Fathers. And so I decided I need to do some research into the Founding Fathers. Who are these guys? What do they believe? What were they about? So I started reading fairly extensively, biographies, documents, etc. And I developed an American idealized vision. Certain idealized truths that we hold near and dear to our heart, some of which are rooted in the Bible and some of which are rooted in our founding documents. And what happened was that, in some respects, I started looking at America through rose-colored glasses, or rose-colored glasses. And so I had this tremendous vision of America, loved America, embraced its ideals, benefited greatly with the American dream, loved being an American, and yet over time I started developing an uneasy feeling within myself. Because I would look at America with these rose-colored glasses and I would say, there's something amiss, there is something wrong, this is what's going on with my country, what is happening to it. And so I had to invite somebody else into the room. Instead of solely relying upon idealized truths handed down by our founding father, I had to look at what's called hard truths. And some people may say, well, we've got our founding fathers that handed us down these great truths, but then there are others in history. And there was a guy about 600 years ago called Machiavelli, and he was an Italian political philosopher from Florence. And so he may be called the father of hard truths, truths that are difficult to appreciate or even understand sometimes. So I had to ask Machiavelli into the room. And so with him standing over my shoulder, I went and studied Athens, birthplace of democracy, that great city-state Athens in ancient time. Well, what did Athens do? It was a tremendous democracy. Do you know that Athens had trial by jury? They had juries thousands of years ago in Athens. Do you know that Athens had trial by your peers? You were tried in front of a jury of your peers. The juries were larger than they are that we use in America. And so Athens was very, very advanced politically, a democracy. And yet, if you study the life of Socrates, an ancient philosopher, he was killed by the state, executed by the state of Athens. What did Socrates say? Well, among other things, he said the Athenian gods were hokey. He had a certain philosophical basis to say that, but he more or less chided and made fun of the Athenian gods. Well, they were the official gods of the Athenian state, and how can you do that? He was tried by a jury, he was tried publicly, and he was executed. Remember, he was a philosopher that had to drink arsenic in his execution. And so, Machiavelli, standing in the corner of the room, says, "Oh, Athens, you great birthplace of democracy, what have you done to your greatest philosopher? You have executed a man, you have prosecuted a man for having an opinion." Whenever a country or a government goes down the path of prosecuting people for having an opinion, it is a dangerous path to follow. You know, if you do a crime, you're prosecuted for a crime. If you have an opinion in a free society, you should be able to have that opinion. And now in America, people are prosecuted for, quote, hate speech and the like. If you develop an unpopular opinion, it's hate. So, never prosecute people for having an opinion. Athens, a democracy, prosecuted people and executed people for having an opinion. Well, let's go down the path a little bit further. Let's go to our own founding fathers. Let's go down to 1776, Thomas Jefferson, writing the Declaration of Independence. And we heard those lofty words. I've got 2 minutes? I thought I had 15. Maybe I'm a slow talker. But I'll move ahead. So, Thomas Jefferson, he says, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, historians tell us that Thomas Jefferson studied John Stuart Mill, a British philosopher, a political philosopher. John Stuart Mill put preeminent the concept of private property in his political philosophy. And some people say, well, why didn't Thomas Jefferson put life, liberty, and property? The pursuit of happiness is so nebulous. What legal meaning does it have? Why didn't he say property as preeminent? Well, some historians will say he had to leave property out of it. The reason being is that there was something in 1700s America up to the 1860s called slavery. And slavery was the elephant in the room with our founding fathers. They didn't know how to deal with it because it was divisive. So property did not get its preeminent place in our founding documents. Yes, it's important. Yes, it's acknowledged. But it's not made as preeminent because slavery was property, property was divisive, and some of our founding fathers, like John Adams, may have said something like, we can't say that. It'll divide us because we can't have a battle over slavery, not while we're trying to form a country. So the problem gets kicked down the road to 1860 and the Civil War. So how does that apply to us today? You know, I go on to YouTube and I go watch the immigration problem in Europe. You know, there's all kinds of videos. And what I said when I started watching these, I said, where are the police at? Where's the military? We have these countries in Sweden, Norway, Greek, you name it, all over Europe that the immigrants are fighting the people. And it's like a rugby scrum. And where's the state? Where's the government? the people are more or less left to fight their own battles against the immigrants. Well, what about in our country? I read an article a couple of months ago that in South Texas, there's some rancher that they got to lock everything up tight as a barrel at night because, they can't go outside their house in South Texas. Other places in South Texas, there's ranchers that can't even go to parts of their ranch because they're smuggling drugs, they're smuggling people, they're smuggling heaven else knows what. And then, in Oregon, these ranchers get prosecuted for starting a brush fire. They're tried as terrorists. They get that designation and therefore they get an increased sentence. As I understand it, they got a 5-year sentence for a brush fire. God forbid. And then you look at Ferguson. Our governor showed a great sign of strength. I remember when the Ferguson unrest, he was calling in the National Guard. And then he stationed the National Guard in places they weren't needed. He let Ferguson burn. There's a lot of those African American people in Ferguson that poured their heart and souls into their small businesses. And they were destroyed overnight. No respect for private property. What's the Machiavellian lesson? What's the hard truth for us? The government exists to promote its own purpose. And we're only incidental to it. See, we like to think, we the people, we like to think for the people, of the people, by the people. And yet in modern America, it's the government promoting itself, looking after its own self-interest, and not ours. So we need to put the skids on. Somehow, some way, get enough Americans that can embrace the original vision of limited government, a free society. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
I'm Jonathan Shell. I work in a factory. I punch a clock just like most of you. I'm not rich. I'm a libertarian. For those of you who don't know what that is, I'll elaborate for a moment. Being a libertarian means I believe in freedom and economic lifestyle choices and equal treatment under the laws. The natural right of the people to liberty and property, non-intervention in foreign and public affairs, and individual liberty and responsibility for one's actions. I have a family and go to church, like most of you here today. I'm deeply troubled by the state of our nation, both fiscally and sovereignly. Revolutions were fought during times better than this. We're losing our rights and freedoms on a daily basis. We entrust politicians who are crooks and thieves preying on us with words like terrorism to strip us of our individual rights and liberties. I think back to when I was in school, where I learned how leadership was supposed to work, and we're taught how bills and amendments became laws, and we even took part in mock elections. But the lessons I learned are far from reality. The realities are whoever holds the most money holds the office. Whoever holds the most money makes the laws. The person, I learned about lobbyists and bribery was definitely not part of our curriculum. I do, however, remember about taxation and about when citizens are pushed too far, they band together and revolt and revolutions happen. We are protected by fundamental rights in this country for an individual to pursue life and goals and liberty. But today it seems our rights are being perverted into not being rights at all. Freedom to assemble is often in need of a permit. Free speech is often an arrestable offense. And don't even think about open carrying your firearm anymore. We become a country of followers, blindly believing our TVs and newspapers. We allow them to influence and educate our children. We've allowed the government to regulate our health care and almost completely kill the middle class. We have allowed our factories and businesses to leave and seek other countries with either cheaper labor or better energy policies. We've let our fears jeopardize our freedom. I want my daughter to know freedom. I don't want her to fear incarceration. We are so quick to hide behind the media and take what they say as the gospel that we forget our own individual choices and rights, opening the floodgates to government intervention, leading to mass incarceration and prosecution of victimless crimes. We lock up citizens in this country at a rate of 716 per 100,000. That's crazy for a country that's in debt up to $20 trillion, led by leaders that take no accountability for their actions. Voters in Missouri passed Amendment Number 5 in 2014. It gave gun rights and made them unalienable for all residents. But earlier this year, 7 Supreme Court judges overruled this amendment, saying nonviolent felons are not to be included. I ask you, who will be next? Men and women who have served, that suffer with PTSD, men and women who've been treated for stress, people who have been medicated. This doesn't sit well with me. Are we so quick to give up our freedoms of security? Our government takes what they want through civil asset forfeiture. The seizure of private property through force, even without conviction sometimes. I urge you as voters this year to take time when voting. Bring your phone, Google the candidates. Make educated choices. The Electoral College only chooses the president. Your vote does matter and will be counted. It's an honor to stand here before you today in the hopes that our governor will leave office knowing that we will not stand for what he's trying to do. That maybe he will leave without doing any more damage to the residents of Missouri. I went to Jeff City to file for my candidacy last week, and I gotta tell you, Jeff City's a slum. It's in bad shape, both physically and politically. I'm a federal candidate, so I won't be in Jeff City. If you vote for me and I get elected, I'll be sent to Washington to represent you. I just want you to really pay attention when you go vote this year, please. There's a lot at stake. Thank you. I won't take up any more time.
Thank you very much, John. Our next speaker is Michael Slack. He's going to be talking on theft is the wrong message to send to citizens. I've known Michael for 3 years now, ever since I got involved, and he has been an indispensable ally. Thank you.
Folks, we are running short of time. We don't want Tori to have a bigger bill. I'm going to really hurry. Pam, you're the next speaker if you want to come on up and get ready. Now, I co-chaired the Property Rights Coalition in Oregon County. I was inspired by Bob Parker, our MC, this morning a few years ago. Frankly, I got pissed off at what was going on. My friend Kevin Johnson and I co-founded our group together. This building today has been filled with people that have been allies in the past fighting the Blue Wave. Now, I'm from Oregon County. Our county commissioners there wanted me to make it very clear to you today, we don't want this park. The money has been stolen from the Lead Belt counties to clean up stuff here. I don't think your representative this morning, Linda Black, quite understood what was going on. It was illegal what they did, but it was wrong. It was immoral. It was theft. Okay. Several representatives, including mine, Jeff Pogue, Senator Robert Ross, Senator Cunningham, and others, have filed bills to force the sale of this 5,000 acres in Oregon County and give the money back to the Lead Belt counties here that need it for the intended purpose. They are filing another bill that says if it sells for less than it was given, the shortfall should come out of the DNR budget. I'm all for it. Now here's what you all need to do. Here's your homework. 2 things. We have a property rights coalition that's active. We've got a lot of others around the state. We get busy. We fight and we win. 4 years ago, a lot of us together beat the blue wave. Thanks, Ike Skelton, for coordinating that effort. We have won a partial battle on the Ozark Scenic Riverways. We're going to win this land grab and cash grab in Oregon County. Okay, the way we do that is you all call your representative and your senator, and you tell them where you stand, number one. Number two, Tori's taking people's email addresses and names on a list out there. That is to form a property rights coalition, or whatever she chooses to call it, in this area. You all need to join that, stay in touch with her on Facebook, online, by phone, and help her in her candidacy. But primarily get your group going so we can fight back and we will win. Now, Pam, I'm done.
Thank you, Michael, for being brief for us. Our next speaker is Pam Arthur. She's going to talk to us about being prepared. Pam, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I'm a former EMT instructor, examiner for the state of Missouri. I worked in medical since I was 19 years old, and I'm almost 62, so I've done it a few years. I've also did the radio show Preparedness Now, 5 days a week for 17 years. Okay, we got that up. Great. I'm going to tell you a joke. There's two chickens going across the highway, and not a safe thing to do, so they were kind of getting in a hurry about it. And this one chicken says, well, I've got to lay an egg. And the other one says, well, go out there and just lay it on the white line and lay it on the line and hurry up. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay it on the line and we're going to hurry up because I've been told I don't have much time. Okay, next slide. Next slide. We're going to really book through this. This is a presentation that I do that normally takes about an hour. So if there's anyone here that would like me to present to their group, let me know. I do come to the St. Louis area occasionally, even though I'm from Kansas City. Let's go to the next one. And this is just different disasters. This is hurricane, oops, that's okay. We'll go to the next one, never mind. Man-made disasters. Now, I want to stop there just for a second. And I really want you to think about this in your mind. What will I do in a day of disaster? What will I do? Not what you will do or someone else will do, but what will I do in a day of disaster? Next slide. The prudent. Proverbs 27:12 says, a prudent person foresees the danger ahead and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. Next slide. This is situational awareness, and basically this is from the Coast Guard manual, and basically it says, let's see, look at my notes here. More simply, it's knowing what's going on around you. Next slide. And this preparedness is about taking care of other people, not just meology. This is where we anticipate the needs of our team, our family, our friends, and we predict the needs of our family. We care about them. And then we want to adapt to the demands efficiently. And unless we're properly prepared, we cannot do this. Next slide. And every decision that I make in a crisis determines if I and those around me live or die. So unless basic human needs are met, like making decisions, are very difficult, if not totally impossible. Next slide. I'm going to skip on through this. Next slide. Now this is really important, and if you really haven't gotten into preparedness, this kind of goes how you should go first and build from this. This will help you in determining how to spend your money. And the first one is psychology of survival. That's your thinking. The next one is security. And we get into all that in Preparedness 101. Shelter, fire, water, food. 4 is medical. That's the golden hour of trauma. Long-term care, hygiene. The 5th area is communication. The 6th area is transportation, compass and maps. And the 7th area is networking, underground railroad, and barter. Next slide. And I'm not going to read all these, but this is the psychology of survival, the will to live. I will never, never, never give up, ever. And this is also where we really need to get ourselves straight if we haven't made peace with my Creator. Next slide. Worry. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not into your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Next slide. And this is where we get real specific into security. Let me read this one. Security is practiced at every level of crisis response, and it should be practiced when there is no crisis at hand. Protection. It is the common thread through every level of disaster response, and it requires a vigilant attitude in one's thinking, looking and listening to things outside of our comfort zone, and being ready for the unexpected. Okay, next. Okay, just glance at that. That's more security. Next. Okay, this is, let's skip this. All right, this is the second area, or the third area. This is shelter, water, food. Fire would be listed on here too. And the situation will decide what comes first. Often, it is fire, as this may be hard to start. Shelter may be first depending on the weather, and of course water is very important consideration. And learning foraging, hunting, and trapping skills are very useful. Gardening, canning, long-term storage food. Next. Just kind of go through these kind of quick. Yeah. And you're going to stop it when you get to the match. Oh, this is Tom Hanks, Castaway. He got excited. I don't know if you can see all that.
Fire.
He was real excited because he'd started a fire. Okay. That's my favorite. Okay, go to the next slide and stop at the next one. All right, stop right there. Medical. No one trains to light a fire with a broken arm. Medical is so, so important. In the event of a disaster, it's very possible that either you would be hurt or others around you, and even loved ones could be dead or missing. No CPR, be able to clear an airway, fracture, splinting, bleeding control, recognize and treat shock. Next frame. I'm going to skip that, go to the next one. To obtain knowledge in caring for the injured and ill during difficult times, go to my website, preparednessnow.com, and go to my archives and listen to the Combat Grilling Nursing Series. This is a series I did right when I was at the end of my radio show. I did a series on setting up a combat nursing station on the front line. Combat. Next, obviously we're not going to go there. Let's go to the next one. Transportation, fuel, stabilizer for fuel, storage in 5-gallon containers, alternate methods of transportation besides your car. You know, this could be anything. Bicycle, horse, dirt bike, off-road 4-wheel drives, maps and compass, conservation maps will show driveways, escape plans with a meeting point. Next frame. Communication. Know your international distress signals. SOS is 3 dots, three shorts, three longs, and 3 shorts. 3 fires can be in a straight line or a triangle, and use of mirror on a sunny day. Next, communication. Use of code that is secret to you, your team, and your family. Use of radio, CBs, ham, FM, bells, whistles, clickers, signal lights. Okay, 2 minutes, whoa, okay, skip. Networking. This is a group of trusted, safe people, and I think there's a lot of neat stuff going on here today. And these are trusted, safe networks of people. An earlier generation called this the Underground Railroad. Nick Spring. NBC protection. We're going to skip through that, sorry. Really important stuff. I don't have this online, but I'll work on that. Isaiah 26:20. Go to your rooms and shut the doors behind you. Hide for a little while until his fury is ended.
5 years ago, I didn't give more than a passing thought about politics, and that all changed when I stopped thinking of it as politics and started thinking about it as my life. And that happened because I went on a journey of self-sufficiency, and when I started that journey, I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and so I started research. And the more I researched, the more wonderful ideas I was getting, and all of these new things to try, and after each one of them, I kept reading these comments. You can't do that, that's illegal. And I don't know about the rest of you, but to me those are two completely different thoughts. You can't do that, and that's illegal. Those are not interchangeable. So what happened was I bought a homestead and I started raising dairy goats. And I started consuming raw milk and selling it and transporting it across state lines. I started watering these goats with rainwater I had collected and stored them in barns that I didn't ask permission to build. So now I'm a full-fledged criminal. Ayn Rand once said that the only power government has is to crack down on criminals. When there are enough criminals, they make them by making everything else, making so many laws that people can't live without breaking them. The more this happened to me, the more it pissed me off. And the angrier I became, the more I started researching into government overreach. And that's what brought me to these kind of places. The more I read about the fact that we've basically given them permission to do whatever they want to do, just increased my rage. And what's really made me mad is that we have elected these people. We have asked them to represent us, to be our hands, to be our mouth, to do for us, to speak for us. And what have they done with our mouth but told us what we can't do? What have they done with our hands but they have taken from us? And the only people that are going to stop them is going to be us. It's not going to be the government. They're not going to hand over their power. It's not going to happen. The only way is to take it from them. I won't go into a long detail. I had another story. Tori wanted me to speak and I laughed at her. I told her I'm not a speaker, I'm a talker. The difference is speakers kind of have a plan and a point, and they can get to that point with the plan. And that's not me. I usually talk until I run out of things to say, and in almost 40 years that hasn't happened. So I'm just going to cut it short. I'm going to let you guys know you're not alone. That's one of the most frustrating things. We feel like we're out there by ourselves battling. Just get involved. Get involved with a group. Get involved with people who are of the same mindset, who think the same way you do. And you will soon find out that it's not just one guy fighting the big bad government. That we just have to band together, and in this kind of day and age where it is so easy to do, there's no reason not to. Thanks.
Slide that back up to the top instead of the bottom, I'd appreciate it. Oh, that's a pretty good message. I know I tried to make it a PowerPoint, but it turned out to be a PDF, so it's got to roll all the way up to the top. Bottom line, what I'm going to talk about today is just the fact that I grew up down in South Iron County, Missouri. I'm the oldest of 9 kids, and I grew up down there, son of Larry and Julianne Huff. My family's been in that area for almost 400 years. And my great-grandfather was a blacksmith up there in Glover, Missouri, which is right up the road from where I grew up. the area where his shop was and his friend Mr. McHenry had his store. There we go. I'm not gonna even attempt to read these slides to you, but we'll go ahead and roll down toward the pictures. That'd be a good place to start. Just gonna show you some pictures of the actual Asarco lead smelter plant site, and the fact that it's sitting basically on top of what used to be my family heritage and my great-grandfather's blacksmith shop. So this is very personal to me. That's Big Creek, Missouri. That's where I used to fish and swim as a young child, and kind of go ahead and hold it right there if you don't mind. Always wondered why the little spring branch that ran across our property was so cold, and the Big Creek stepped into it was so warm. Well, I come to find out why. And that's because that big tall tower you see right there had a lake built, an artificial lake that drained right back into Big Creek, and it was warming the waters of Big Creek, not only warming them, but I believe polluting them. I think that's an undeniable fact. And to this day, Big Creek still has a very high prevalence of parasites and other problems with the fish population. And it's sad that took place. You can scroll down now, and I think it'll take us down to there's the Asarco Lake, which you can see flows right back into Big Creek, which flows right past Glover right down there. That's my great-grandfather Newton Huff. That's what's left of his farm on the left-hand side there. And if you scroll down one more, you'll see what exists today. Now this is real, people. This is what's really existing down in South Iron County right now. We've got a shut down smelter. They've never made any effort to repair the damages they've done to the environment of the community down there. And we're faced with barbed wire at every entrance. It looks almost more like a war zone to me, but that's where my great-granddad's blacksmith shop used to sit. So, keep on rolling past that. Bottom line, the message I wanted to make was the fact that this isn't just some legislature in Jeff City. This is very personal. This is affecting all of us. And when they take these funds and just government overreach as a whole, they take these funds and they misappropriate them, or they do whatever they say and say it's legal to buy other land down to fulfill the Agenda 21 initiative. And they leave us sitting there. What are they going to do about the people that are sitting right here in the area? What are they going to do about the lead bill? What are they going to do about the damages that's been done to our own home? Are they going to say, well, you go down to the state park in Northern County as compensation for the fact you're living in a polluted, damaged area that they haven't touched? No, they can't do that because we're not all going to pick up and move. I don't think they're going to offer to move us. So, go ahead and roll on down there. I think we've got some more images if they haven't all disappeared. Bottom line, there you go. That's what you see. And the settlement funds were intended to clean this up and help our area recover from the 150 years of lead mining and damages to the environment of our area. There's some very positive uses for the EPA and these other organizations that are overreaching into this Agenda 21. They could be sitting here and helping us clean up the messes that are all around us. We need to give something better than this to our children. My children, I have 7 of them at home and 1 on the way, so I'd like to leave something a little bit more than this to my kids. People don't mind scrolling down, man. That's our family church. And well, it's off the right-hand side. You can't see it. The towers are right behind it, so nobody goes there anymore. Scroll on down. That's more of the old churchyard. There we go. I used to see those smokestacks blow in their smoke. And I used to look up and ask my dad, why the sky glowed orange at night? Well, it was those smokestacks pumping out whatever they were pumping out into our area. And literally for, I don't know, I don't even want to estimate how many miles, but for miles around that site, the trees are dead. That's what all those pictures disappeared were. It's all dead timber standing there. It's desolate, dead timber and scrub is about all you'll see anymore. If you want to scroll on down. I would like to see this fixed, and I think every one of us would. And I think that we need to have a say in how this happens. And if we're given a settlement right directly from the ASARCO company for this repair, I think it needs to be coming back. And I think we need to stand up. That's what we're doing here today. We're standing up as we the people, and we're going to stand up and say something. And hopefully they hear us. If they don't hear us, we're going to have to vote them out and make them hear us. We got to, there we go, the ASARCO settlement funds were not meant to help, were meant to help fix these atrocities, not buy new land and give a distant county a new park. And they already sat here and said they don't want it. So we need to stand up and stop it. We need to say no. If you can scroll down, man, that's the last slide, and I'd like to close by saying, we the people need to stand up and do what we do, and we need to take responsibility and fix this. If you can scroll down, I appreciate it. There it is. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Tim. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure to see all of you out here on a Saturday when you could have been doing something else. This is what we have to work with, folks. It's us. We have a lot of work to do. I want to remind everybody, if you didn't know it, it took 3% of the population to fight the revolution with the Brits back in 1775, 6 through 1781. So when it looks bad, when it looks gloomy and it looks like there's no way we can win, we have to remember, it doesn't take a lot of us, but we do have to hang together. And now we have one more thing, then we're going to pack up and move out. So thank you again. We're going to have a drawing. Tessa was running a raffle. Tessa Marler, would you start pulling tickets until you find one?
How about let's just read the last three numbers. I think surely that ought to do it. 182. Okay. How about 141? One 164. One 177. Wake up. 136. 180. Jan Shell. Didn't I just see her here? She bail out? Okay. Is there anybody here that actually has a ticket in their hand? Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
I just walked back down.
All right, you two, I'm not going to dig through all these till we find somebody. Get up here. We'll send these other ones to them, and that's what we'll do.
Well, she's wrapping that up, folks. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad you came out today. We're going to wrap it up now. Have safe travels home. I know a lot of you traveled a long ways, so be safe going home. Thank you.